Oh, sorry. I thought you were going through trash. Mia showed a triumphant smile, unaware she was making a mistake that would end her life. My name is Ella. I'm 32 years old. I work as a seamstress at a TV and film studio, fixing costumes. The costumes at the studio are diverse, ranging from extravagant period pieces to everyday clothes used in contemporary shows. I alter the designs to fit the era and size them to fit the actors, repairing any wear and tear from filming. My daily work involves handling clothes, using sewing machines and irons. My actual specialty is sewing, though my main job is to fix clothes. I'm also skilled at creating garments from scratch. Since I was young, I learned needlework by watching my mother. That's why I consider this job my true calling. The hours are a bit irregular, and sometimes the demands are unreasonable, but I love my work. I hope to work here forever. I met my husband Harry at this studio. Harry was in charge of taking care of the actors. We are 3 years apart in age, and since we saw each other every day, we naturally grew closer over time. 2 years after we met and amidst our busy schedules, we eventually got married. We began our new life together, but just as the new life started, my mother suddenly fell ill and passed away, forcing Harry and me to postpone our wedding. Originally, we had planned a simple ceremony at a local church with just family, but the delay prompted us to save up for a proper wedding and honeymoon. Given our irregular work schedules, we thought it wasteful to rent a house just to sleep in. So, to save for the wedding and honeymoon, Harry and I started living with his mother, Mia, at his family home. I lost my father early, and coincidentally, Harry had the same experience. My mother was the only surviving parent, and Harry worried about his mother living alone. I wanted to get along with Mia, but in hindsight, that was the beginning of a nightmare. Mia had no intention of getting along with me. In her eyes, I was no different from a thief who had stolen her son. As soon as we moved in, the harassment began. If I cleaned, Ella, what is this? It's so dirty here, there, and over there. I wonder what kind of upbringing you had. Your parents must have been quite something. I endured the harassment, trying to keep up with the cleaning, even causing my hands to crack and bleed. The strictness regarding household chores was unimaginable. Cleaning, laundry, cooking, if anything was even slightly unsatisfactory, no matter how tired I was, she would make me do it over with a nonchalant face. The more tired I was, the worse the harassment got. No matter how perfectly I did something, she would always find a flaw. I remember scrubbing the sink all night long. It seemed like she was displeased with everything about me. Mia had ordered I do all the household chores. Struggling to balance work and chores, I eventually arranged to work from home. This only escalated. Mia's demands, day in and day out, made me feel like Cinderella slaving over household tasks. Is the laundry done? The curtain upstairs is torn, fix it. You're good at sewing, aren't you, Mia? I'm sorry, I have urgent work. Can't the curtain wait until the weekend? What are you saying? If it's left like that, who knows what the neighbors will say. Fix it right away. I found myself doing housework while working, or rather, working while doing housework. Often, I had to work through the night because the chores never seemed to end. Mia seemed to thoroughly enjoy watching me become more and more exhausted. She was a perfect sadist, torturing me with her harassment, especially during the daytime when Harry was not around. The relationship between Mia and me was like that of an owner and a maid. I did all the housework. I had pride and couldn't easily confide in Harry. I did my best to fulfill my role, but more than the physical strain of the chores, there was something even more mentally taxing. Occasionally, Mia would invite neighbors over for lunch, and those occasions were truly like hell. Mia was even harsher in front of the neighbors. From their conversation, I could hear them bad-mouthing me. Seriously, she's such a terrible daughter-in-law. I have to educate her every single day. My son is blind to it, but I'm not fooled. She's just so unlikable and lacking in common sense. I listened to the neighbors' laughter, chiming in as if in agreement, and thought to myself, who's the one lacking common sense? Once housework is done, it's done, but their harsh words linger heavily on my heart. Honestly, I felt like I was reaching my limit every day. If this continued, I felt like I might lose my mind. But that wasn't all. Harry has an older sister, Sophia, who's 38. Sophia lived with her boyfriend in a nearby town. If I were to describe Sophia in one word, it'd be stingy. She would come to eat lunch at our house almost every day, probably to save money. The worst part was her unannounced visits. Since I never knew when she was coming, I couldn't have her portion of the meal ready. She would casually eat my food and leave. Everything she owned was hers, everything at her parents' house was hers, she would just take anything that was at the house. Perfect, I was just running out of Kleenexes. I'll take these. But, Sophia, I just bought those for Mia. Then I'd get a glaring look, what are you talking about? You're always home, aren't you? Just go buy more, like mother, like daughter. It's a wonder how Harry turned out so well. The biggest problem was when she would take dinner ingredients without asking. Every time, I had to stop my chores and work to go shopping again. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. Sophia, could you please let me know before you take something? Apparently, she told Mia about it. Did you tell Sophia not to come over anymore? What? No, I didn't say that. So you're saying Sophia's lying? Caught between Sophia's lies and Mia's cruelty, Mia alone would be hell, but when you put the two of them together, the mental burden continued. One day, as I passed by the room where the two were talking, I overheard them talking loud enough so I could hear. It's like having a free maid. How nice. I'm jealous. Send her to my house too, maid. Am I not a daughter-in-law? I had thought of myself as a maid, but hearing it said out loud was unbearable. Something inside me snapped that night. I finally poured out my feelings to Harry. I can't do this anymore. I've been patient, but I can't live with Mia any longer. Please, I want to live somewhere else. After a moment of silence, Harry said, okay, we've saved enough money. Let's move out soon. Really? I'll start looking for a place right away. Tears of relief streamed down my face. Unbeknownst to us, Mia was standing right outside our room. We had no idea this would lead to her bizarre behavior later on. From that day on, the days that had been so oppressive suddenly began to shine. I had one dream, I wanted to wear a wedding dress I made myself for my wedding. After all, sewing was my profession. After talking with Harry, filled with motivation, I immediately ordered a large amount of fabric online. I decided to focus on making the dress as my new purpose. That's what I decided. I started sewing the dress secretly in my room, away from Mia and Sophia. But one day, Sophia, who often dropped by unannounced, caught me. What's this dress? It's nice to have your own dress. Hey, Ella, I'm getting married in 2 months. Make my dress too. Really? Yes, renting is just a waste of money. I want to keep costs low for the wedding, so please. Typical Sophia, always looking to save money. I hesitated but agreed to make it since she would cover the material costs. I started making Sophia's dress first. As our wedding was still far off, Sophia told me, keep this a secret from Mom. It seemed she planned to tell Mia she was renting the dress and get financial support from her. Whatever material costs she paid me, she was determined to recoup. Stinginess to this extent is almost impressive. I even talked to Harry about this situation. His response was, sis never backs down once she decides something. I'm sorry, but it would really help if you could make it for her. I was asked. Feeling positive, I answered with a smile, leave it to me. I'll do my best. I was getting paid, so I felt motivated. I thought of it as practice for making my own dress without spending on materials. I also had a little bit of hope that this might improve my relationship with Sophia. So, I immersed myself in dressmaking between housework and my main job. Even Mia seemed to realize what I was up to, she occasionally peeked into my room. Sophia's wedding was approaching fast, and the dress was nearly complete. Then one day, Mia appeared in my room with a smile. You're working hard again today. Aren't you tired? Yes, a bit. Her sudden change in demeanor was unsettling. I'm going to make some coffee. Why don't you take a break? Really, that would be great. Thank you. No worries at all. I'll bring it to you later. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. As Mia left humming, I felt a strange unease. Mia making coffee for me? That's never happened before. Could it be something more sinister? Different thoughts raced through my mind, but there was no point in worrying. I decided to get back to work. I was just adding the final touches of lace. The end was in sight. Despite it being Sophia's dress, I found myself putting love into it. Suddenly, I smelled coffee. Mia knocked on the door. Ella, may I come in? Oh, what is it? The next moment, I was shocked. Mia entered with a tray piled high with cups and saucers, all filled with coffee. Mia, wait. It wasn't just for two. It looked like she was preparing for a party. The tray was so heavy, her arms trembled as I instinctively moved to stop her from entering further. Oops. Mia pretended to trip, the sound of cups breaking and coffee splashing everywhere filled the room. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what happened. Everything felt like slow motion. Looking down, my yellow-colored dress was stained like a giraffe pattern. Ah! I screamed involuntarily. I didn't miss the brief smile on Mia's face. Oh no. I'm so sorry. It wasn't on purpose. Did you get burned? Wait, is that a dress? I thought you were going through trash. I was speechless. The shock of her actions left me frozen. Then, Mia feigned concern. Oh dear, you can't have your wedding like this, can you? My suspicions turned into certainty. Mia was trying to sabotage our wedding. Her plan was to ruin our plans to move out after the wedding. But I couldn't afford to be angry now. I rushed to the bathroom with the stained dress. I frantically rinsed the coffee off. I knew the stain would set if I didn't act quickly. Mia watched with a malicious grin. Need any help? No, I'm fine, I replied coldly. I was in anger and panic. Then, someone appeared behind Mia. What's this? Are you bullying Ella again? It was Sophia. No, I just accidentally spilled coffee on her dress, Mia said with apparent enjoyment. This was bad, but the situation took an unexpected turn. What? Are you serious? That's my dress. Wait, what? Mia was speechless. Yours, Sophia? What do you mean? I can't believe this. I had her make my dress. What am I going to do? My wedding is in 2 weeks. Mia was panicking like I'd never seen before. There's no way. While listening to their ridiculous exchange, I continued to wash the dress I had been working on for months for my sister-in-law. As I washed the dress, I thought to myself, I hadn't told anyone I was making the dress for Sophia. So, Mia must have thought the dress was for me. She wouldn't have deliberately spilled coffee otherwise. If she had known it was for Sophia, there'd be no reason to ruin it. Harry and I planned to leave this dreaded family home after the wedding. To Mia, I was always the thief cat who stole her beloved son. She couldn't bear the thought of the woman she saw as a mere maid taking her son away. She thought by sabotaging our wedding, her son would stay home. Such petty thoughts led to her bizarre actions. Sophia was furious, blaming Mia and attacking her. How could you do this? Everything is ruined. I can't believe my own mother would destroy my wedding. I'm sorry, Sophia. Please forgive me. I didn't know it was your dress. You don't think I did it on purpose, do you? Mia finally spoke her true feelings. While listening, I pretended not to hear and continued washing the dress. Then you thought it was Ella's dress and deliberately stained it. A man's voice echoed. Everyone turned around at once. Oh, Harry, when did you get here? So, that's what happened, Mom. Harry stood there with an indescribable expression. I was so focused on washing the dress and listening to their argument that I hadn't noticed Harry's arrival. At the perfect moment, he had been silently observing the ugly quarrel between his mother and sister. Harry slowly began to speak, looking utterly disappointed. You saw Ella working hard on that dress every night, and yet you deliberately stained it. That's truly despicable. It's not like that. This is. Don't make excuses. Harry shouted. Mia and Sophia were taken aback. Mia, in particular, had probably never imagined being yelled at by her son, whom she cherished so much. Harry continued calmly yet sadly. I'm disappointed, Mom. Ella had been enduring your attitude all this time, and we both hoped that one day you might change. Ella was patient for my sake because you're my mom. Hearing this, I felt tears welling up. I had somewhat seen Harry as indecisive and too submissive to his mother, but that was a complete misconception. Before me stood a man determined to protect the woman he loved. Harry's firm stance, though out of place in the situation, made me fall for him all over again. He continued addressing Mia, and it all comes down to this. I can't just overlook it, Mom. Sorry, but Ella and I are leaving this place as soon as possible. I plan to stay here until the wedding for your sake, but I can't stay any longer. This time it was just a dress, but who knows, Ella could be in danger next time. It'll be too late then, Mom. Danger? I would never put her in danger. How can you even say that after ruining Ella's hard work so casually? Harry's anger was palpable, but this was his mother. Instead of using abusive language or an overbearing attitude, Harry quietly vented his anger on Mia. His expression was something I had never seen before, anger mixed with an indescribable sadness. He was denying everything about his mother, who had always doted on him. Mia seemed deeply affected, she was speechless, reduced to tears. Mia, who was usually quick with aggressive remarks, was now crying. Sophia was also stunned, alternating her gaze between Harry and Mia. Later, Sophia cancelled her wedding since it was so close to the date, and she was not getting any of her money back. It's not my fault at all. Mia was the one who paid for it, so Sophia wasn't losing any money. Mia seemed to finally regret her thoughtless harassment that had spiraled out of control. The shock of being scolded by her son also left her quite weakened. But the issue wasn't confined to our house. Sophia's sudden cancellation angered her boyfriend and his family. Eventually, Sophia ended up breaking up with him, and Mia was continually blamed by Sophia for this outcome. After we left the family home, Mia occasionally contacted us, asking for money. One reason she didn't want us to leave was the financial aspect. While living together, we contributed to the household expenses, but Mia had no income apart from her pension. It seemed she had been relying on our money. However, every time Mia called asking for money, Harry refused. Mom, why don't you work? There are plenty of jobs out there. We need to be independent, you and us. Please leave us alone, Mia pleaded, not to be abandoned, but Harry remained firm. His resolve seemed to stem from a sense of duty. Later, Mia started working as a janitor. Her strictness with cleaning seemed to fit the job, which was ironically a bit amusing. Sophia, after breaking up with her boyfriend and moving out of their apartment, returned to live with Mia. She completely stopped working, relying on Mia's part-time income and pension. I saw her once, and she was unrecognizably overweight. Harry and I moved into an apartment and are enjoying our new happy life. There's no one here to make snide remarks or be sarcastic. Our life now is so blissful compared to our time in that dysfunctional family home. We finally set a date for our wedding. We decided on a small ceremony with just friends and colleagues and chose not to invite Mia and Sophia. We didn't want any disturbances, especially considering both are in a dark place right now. But that's just how it has to be, they brought it upon themselves. I've started making a new dress for the big day. It's going to be much more beautiful than the one that ended up with a giraffe pattern.
I caught my cheating wife and her lover at home and turned their lives upside down for revenge. I witnessed everything unfold in slow motion. It's strange how the mind operates. I was being propelled backwards, falling. I caught a glimpse of a blurry figure, then the roof, then my feet and the roof simultaneously. I hit the ground, landing on my upper back first. Excruciating pain, a crunch in the darkness. What a dreadful nightmare. I groggily regained consciousness. My head pounded, my entire torso ached. I had no idea where I was. I lay there for a few seconds before trying to open my eyes. I squinted, seeing only a fluorescent light fixture and ceiling tiles. I closed my eyes again. My body was consumed with pain, each breath, agony. I felt like crying out but remained still, trying to understand what was happening. The first attempt to turn my head made it clear that any movement was unwise. A jolt of pain shot down my spine. I tried to look sideways without moving. Even that minimal movement hurt. Then I heard voices. Was that what woke me? Is he going to survive? A doctor asked. Yes, replied another voice. When do you think he will regain consciousness? Asked the first voice with a tone of concern. He showed signs of waking earlier, but then lost consciousness again. We just need to be patient, said another voice, whom I assumed was the doctor. Considering what happened, he's fortunate. The MRI revealed no cranial bleeding, but there is already some swelling. He definitely has a concussion. We'll need to monitor the potential for further brain swelling. His left arm is broken in one place, both the radius. Judging by the condition of his back, he hit the stairs at shoulder blade level and then slid the rest of the way down. His back is badly bruised. His suit coat protected him from being scraped raw. But it's probably good that he was leaning to his left. Otherwise, the weapon he was carrying might have worsened the injuries. He might have fractured his sacrum or his hip. He ended up resting after hitting the back of his head, which has scrapes and significant bleeding. No stitches were needed. We cleaned and bandaged the wound. I understand he stopped with his feet still on the stairs. He essentially surfed down until his head and shoulders hit the bottom. Voice 1 confirmed this. How he managed not to tumble, I have no idea. I guess he went most of the way down in midair. It was about, or steps, said Voice 1. I didn't count, but I'll need it for my report. So we have no idea when we might be able to talk with him, said the doctor. There was a pause. We're having the woman checked out. She was resisting, but I saw blood on her fingers and wanted to collect evidence before it got washed away. Also, the sufferer had 3 long gouges on his right forearm. Can you tell me if they were made from hand to elbow, or vice versa? Asked another voice. I closed my eyes, trying to calm down. The monitor was beeping fast but not accelerating. I heard the curtain pull back and someone fiddling with the tape on my arm. From hand to elbow for sure, the doctor said. Which doesn't make sense considering the direction of his fall. Makes sense from another perspective, said a voice. His right coat sleeve was pushed up to his elbow. I'll confirm with forensics. Can I get a cup of coffee while I make a few calls, Sue? Can you get the officer some coffee? Better make it 2. His partner is here too, said a voice. The curtain closed again. So what do you have? Asked a new voice from behind the curtain. The first voice explained what the doctor said. We have both a man and woman downtown, said the second cop. Their stories match but don't align with witnesses. Lucky we were nearby when the call came. Responding officers barely arrived before us. Glad they could check the sufferer while we examined the scene. Yeah, Voice 1 replied. Did you see the video? Video? The second cop asked. A girl across the landing was showing her parents her new apartment when the shouting started. They recorded a naked man and woman on the landing. The man yelled, "That'll show you your place, you stupid loser." They didn't see what they were looking at down the stairs, but it was clear they had just been having sex, explained Voice 1. Good thing witnesses saw who was there, said the second voice. One called emergency. A young neighbor was next to the sufferer when the first unit arrived, pointing at the guy, saying he pushed him. Don't let him get away. The guy was dressed and running downstairs while the woman stood at the top in a row bawling. They both lied, saying they were innocently visiting when the sufferer attacked and fell over his own feet, said the second voice. Both men laughed. I thought about what I heard. My brain was functioning. Maybe I could turn this around. Would it be wrong to lie? He pushed me down the stairs. I could have died. Let me go back 3 weeks. Judy, my wife, was in the shower and left her phone on the makeup table. It pinged. I looked at it. Hey, sweet cheeks, I want some hot lovemaking. How about tomorrow afternoon? It was from her boss, Mark Danvers. This wasn't the first inappropriate text. A month earlier, I saw a text from him saying, "You looked fine this morning. I want some love soon." Judy covered it up, claiming it was meant for his wife, Julie, whose contact is next to hers. Mark called, apologizing, saying he was trying to spice things up with his wife. Judy laughed it off, and we did too, making love that night. I forgot about it until now. If Mark messed up again, why text his wife about tomorrow? I realized my wife was cheating on me. I thought our relationship was solid, but it wasn't. Judy and I met a few months before graduating college, both business majors. We'd seen each other in classes but never interacted socially. I was the typical nerd, she was the hot chick. We clicked once we got to know each other. I wasn't socially awkward, just not the athletic type usually seen with hot girls. I was 5 feet 8 inches and 145 lbs. My sister and her friends thought I was good-looking, but not a stud. I joked about it once, and we all laughed. One day I overheard Judy tell my sister, "Your brother isn't teased, he teases back, and let me tell you, he's got nothing to be embarrassed about." Becky and her friends were embarrassed. Judy wasn't seeking a rich guy. We got by, but we weren't wealthy. Judy's sales covered her business expenses, and I supported us with my sales rep job after graduation. I continued my education to get a CPA and MBA, aiming to set up my own office. This meant working hard, often traveling to service distant accounts. Once I suspected Judy might be cheating, I paid closer attention. Mark and his wife were in their 40s with 3 kids. Judy and I hadn't started a family yet, though I wanted to. We had been discussing her going off the pill to get pregnant, but now I was glad we hadn't. I realized I'd never have a child with Judy. I had looked forward to lovemaking that night, but now I felt different. Judy was getting ready in the shower, knowing I'd start with oral sex when she came out, looking and smelling good. I wasn't interested. I lied about feeling unwell and went to the bathroom. She went to bed, and I stayed up researching how to spy on her phone. It was easier than I thought. I installed a spy app on her phone and downloaded her texts, monitoring her phone. I found that Mark, her boss, was a prolific flirt. They managed to sneak away together a couple of times a week, with flirtatious texts and calls. I saved copies of a particularly graphic phone conversation. I didn't need it to divorce Judy, which I intended to do soon, but I wanted undeniable proof she was cheating. "Let's have sex at your apartment this Thursday when your husband is out of town," Mark asked. "I love bending you over the couch and pounding you from behind." "Quit calling Robert a loser. It's disrespectful," Judy said with a hint of irritation. Mark laughed and started to say something. "Robert is just as large as you, if not larger. You were just too rough." I love that pounding, which is why I keep coming back. "Robert prefers making love, but sometimes I want it rough," Judy continued. "Yeah, you scream when I pound away," Mark chortled. "Julie used to love it too, but she says I get too wild. She likes being on top to control the action. Your guy can't man up like I can. Your jackhammer act is what I want a couple of times a week. Making love is great, and Robert can get rough occasionally, but he stops when I hurt. You don't. My guts are sore, but I love it. I'm in love with Robert, but sometimes I want wild sessions, and if you call him a loser again, you won't get any this week. Wear a rubber or no sex." "Robert and I are planning to have a baby," Judy said firmly. "I hate protection," Mark groaned. "Well, it's that or no sex," Judy said. "And if it breaks, I'm using douche. Afraid my swimmers are better than Robert's," Mark laughed. "Nice save," Judy laughed. "But I can't take the risk," Mark laughed. "All babies look alike at first. He'd be stuck raising my kid if his name is on the birth certificate. Or that'd be funny." "No, they don't. Babies are cute, and he'd have a year to contest it," Judy said seriously. "And I'd come after you for child support." "You want that risk? Screw that." "Maybe I should get snipped," Mark said. "Julie doesn't want more kids, and I don't want to give up the hot sex with you." "Snipped or not, you can have the 403, Judy said, ending the conversation. That conversation might not be admissible in court because one party has to know they're being recorded, but I didn't care. I needed proof Judy was cheating. She tried to make me the bad guy, claiming the affair was my imagination or just a one-time thing. These 3 weeks of gathering evidence really dampened my love for her. Once I knew for sure, I started the process to get rid of her. First, I paid off all our debts. My student loans were significant, but I paid them off first. We were careful with credit card debt, our cars were paid off, and we had some savings for a house. I also started stashing cash. I knew I'd have to pay alimony since Judy didn't make much from real estate. I paid my lawyer up front to decrease our cash. I trimmed our cash reserves and had my paycheck diverted, but I knew I'd still have to give Judy her half. I just didn't want her taking more. I hired an attorney and got the papers ready. Once she was served, the crap would hit the fan. Back to that day. I was supposed to be out of town but had a coworker cover for me so I could handle personal issues. I considered various scenarios. At first, I thought I'd act surprised to find them in bed, maybe run Mark off at weapon point or hit him with a tire iron, but that would mean jail time. All my friends knew I had a concealed carry permit and often carried a pistol when I traveled. I knew I couldn't fight Mark. I'm an LBS. Mark is at least. And LBS, always bragging about his college football weight. That fight like a man stuff is nonsense. David used a slingshot against Goliath, and I wish I were as smart as David. My plans vanished when I unlocked my apartment door. Mark's car was next to Judy's. I quietly entered, not jingling my keys. Their grunting drowned out any noise. "Do me, pound me," Judy's words hit me hard. She was bent over the couch as Mark jackhammered her. I thought about kicking him, but his legs were too close. I punched him in the side, knocking him off her. "You witch! You creep!" he yelled, realizing what happened. Mark quickly grabbed me by my suit coat. I tried to punch him and reach my pistol, but my coat was restrictive. He shook me violently. My kicks barely affected him. Judy turned and grabbed my right arm, preventing me from drawing my weapon. Her nails gouged my arm, causing the 3 furrows. Mark half lifted me, charged across the living room, and threw me out the door. I flew down the stairs, hearing a crunch as I hit the ground. Listening to the cops, I quickly formulated a plan. I moaned loudly, signaling I was awake. The doctor checked me out, concluding I was basically intact but should limit movement. The cops asked for my story. I told them almost everything, including how I caught Mark and Judy in the act. I added that Mark threatened to eliminate me and called me a loser. Judy urged him to act quickly, knowing I had a weapon. Mark threw me down the stairs, and that's all I remembered. I didn't feel bad about lying, screw both of them. I hoped there was no contrary evidence. Forensics supported my story. Mark claimed he defended himself against my attack. He said he was visiting Judy because she felt bad, and I misunderstood. Judy said Mark pushed me hard, and she grabbed my arm to stop me from striking him, causing the scratches. Investigators found Mark's semen on my pants, proving proximity. Smears of semen and vaginal fluid on my right leg showed I kicked him in the groin. I was facing him, not running. Mark wasn't charged with attempted felony but with assault. He posted bail, costing him $5,000. I wondered if he thought it was worth it. I wouldn't know the full story for a while. My brothers didn't tell me everything until the doctor said I was out of danger, to keep me calm. Shortly after giving my statement to the cops, I passed out. To me, it felt like no time had passed when I woke up in a dim room, thinking about my conversation with the cops. I decided how I'd respond to Judy and Mark if I saw them again. They were cheaters who wanted me dead, and I'd treat them accordingly. Just before passing out, I had planned to shoot Mark if he ever approached me. I'd claim I thought he was coming to finish the job. A nurse was in the room, and then I saw Judy. I yelled, "Get her out! She tried to eliminate me! Get her out!" My brother rushed in. Judy, shocked and crying, protested, "I didn't hurt you. I love you." "You helped him throw me down the stairs," I yelled. They ushered Judy out, still protesting. I did want to talk to her, to hear her explain why she sought rough lovemaking elsewhere instead of talking to me. If she wanted rough roleplay, I would have been happy to oblige, but I couldn't condone her cheating. The doctors kept me in the hospital for a week due to my concussion, fearing brain swelling. My brothers visited regularly and camped out in my room the first couple of days. They could barely believe what I said about Judy. I whispered to John, "I exaggerated her role in trying to eliminate me." John looked puzzled. "Why would you do that?" "I can always back off later," I said. "For now, I want her to suffer. She cheated and destroyed our marriage. Tell Dave I'm paranoid about recording, so I won't say more here." John chuckled. "You're really something." The day I got out of the hospital, I told John how I bugged Judy's phone. "Tell her I'm hurt and angry, but we'll talk when I'm ready." John grinned. Give her a little hope like she gave you before crushing it. I was angry but still loved her, which made it hurt more. Julie, Mark's wife, visited me the day after I woke up. She had heard parts of what happened. When charges are filed, the details aren't publicized. Julie sat down, concerned. Why was Mark arrested for assaulting you? Mark had told her the same lie he told the police. He was visiting Judy, and I jumped to conclusions, leading to a scuffle where I fell down the stairs. He claimed innocence, unaware of the video or forensic evidence. I wondered if he was delusional or hoping the neighbors wouldn't be questioned. They were having sex when I walked in. I told Julie. Julie nodded. Mark said you claim he was having an affair, but it was innocent. I'm not buying that. Do you have proof? I asked. Julie sighed. I have a prenup. I get 70% of the communal assets if he cheated, and I can prove it. I plan to sue him after his criminal trial. Contact an attorney and file for divorce to lock your assets so he can't use them for his defense. I have an audio recording of their affair, text copies, and a video of them unclothed on the landing after he threw me down the stairs. My clothes might have evidence too, I said. Julie looked shocked. You have all that? I nodded. I knew Mark liked rough lovemaking, and that convinced her. I have everything. Julie stood up, determined. I'm going to see my lawyer. Please help me get the rest of that evidence as soon as you can. I assured her I will. Julie, Mark, and Judy have no idea how much evidence there is against them. They're sticking to their lie, telling the cops I overreacted. Mark's probably doing damage control, maybe even hiding money, but you can get that back. Hopefully, what he forfeits to the bondsman comes out of his share. Julie hugged me and wished me well before leaving. I had met her at Mark's parties. She was nice and didn't deserve the mess coming her way. Neither did I. The day after leaving the hospital, I was at my family's fishing camp, planning to take medical leave and use my vacation time. My boss knew the situation and was finding a way for me to work remotely as I recuperated and still got paid. I thought about how I turned their cheating into a crime. I had been pushed down the stairs, not due to my own clumsiness. Mark might have just wanted to get his pants on without getting shot, but I didn't care. I wanted to go for his jugular. That morning, I canceled our credit card, leaving Judy her half of the balance, which wasn't much. I waited to avoid tipping my hand too early. Now I wouldn't provide a penny for Judy until the court ordered me to. Rent and utilities were paid, but she'd get nothing more. Julie moved swiftly, taking her of the available cash and locking their investment accounts. I wanted answers. I called Judy and told her where I was. She had begged my brothers to let her talk to me while I was in the hospital. I told her to come alone. If she brought Mark, I'd assume he was coming after me and act accordingly. I wanted that on record to deter another attack. It was a tearful meeting. I loved Judy, but not as much as before. She loved me, but not enough to stay loyal. I'm glad you let me come to talk, she said, parking. You know I wasn't helping Mark try to eliminate you, she began. I shrugged and invited her inside, claiming I felt weak and asked her to get us drinks. She knew the house well. While she got beers from the fridge, I set up video recordings focused on the chair where she'd sit. I'm wondering if you're trying to get me to say something on a recording, I started. She assured me she wasn't. My phone is in my purse, she said, then stripped unclothed to prove she had nothing on her. Want to do a cavity search? She teased, moving her hips. She was smiling, thinking this was a kinky game. I might have been interested if she hadn't been screwing her boss. You might want to get dressed while we talk, I said. Screw that, she replied. I'll stay unclothed. Give me a towel so I don't leave a snail trail on the chair. Are you sure you don't want to check if I have a recorder hidden? She asked, grinning. Please take your time feeling around. She wasn't being sarcastic. She genuinely wanted to play. She knew the effect she had on me and was playing me. She had an agenda. Where do you want to start? She asked. Let's start with why you cheated, but why you helped that fool try to eliminate me, I spat, trying to control myself. I wasn't trying to help him, Judy said tearfully. I was trying to protect myself. I had no idea he'd push you. I wanted to stop you from shooting him. Even when he pushed you outside, I thought he'd just close the door so we could get dressed and deal with it, but then he threw me down the stairs. I finished. She nodded, looking horrified and guilty. I was afraid you were dead. He pushed you so hard you flew into the air. When I saw you lying there not moving, I was terrified. You didn't even check on me. The police said Cheryl from next door was kneeling by me while you stood on the landing in a robe crying, I said. You went inside. Mark got dressed and you made up a story about me misunderstanding the situation and attacking him. No mention of catching you two having sex. I didn't describe it that way, Judy paused. How do you know what we said? The cops interrogated me. They heard two people tell one story, and I told another with a head injury. They wanted to make sure I didn't misinterpret things. They charged Mark with assault, not attempted felony. Why did you lie for him? I was scared, Judy said. Mark told me if you had a head injury, you might not remember anything. We made up a quick story. Mark thought he could get away with it. You were willing to go that far too. Cover for him? I asked. He said he'd make it up to me if the truth came out. He'd lose everything and we'd both go to jail, Judy sobbed. If you survived, it would be your word against ours. We had to keep up the lie, even after we knew you'd be okay. Mark kept saying maybe you'd have amnesia. Do you remember everything? I asked. You're worried about his prenup with his wife, aren't you? I already told her what I saw. She needs proof to invoke it. Your word isn't enough, Judy said. Mark asked me to tell you he'd pay you $50,000, 25, 0,000 each. If you change your story about pushing you and us having sex, we can use it for counseling. I'll quit my job and we can get back together. I hadn't expected this nonsense. I spat. Do you think I cover for him? Plus his wife would find out if he moved that kind of money. He can't buy a candy bar without her knowing. He's been hiding money in an offshore account for years, Judy said. He's been putting money in a royal bank account in Grand Cayman under his oldest son's name. He'll give us some if you change your story, please, Robert. We can have a nest egg and get back to where we were. Mark means nothing to me. You are what I want. I want a family with you, she pleaded. I chuckled. Do you see the holes in your story? Even if I lie and say I was confused, do you think Mark would pay us? He'd laugh at how he fooled me again. He made me a loser, and now I'd be a dumb loser changing my story. He'd never confess to you about hiding money. He knows you're gullible and hopes I am too. If it were true, he'd keep it secret. Judy looked thoughtful, then shook her head. I'm sure we can trust him, she said. Before I consider anything, I need to see the bank transfer, including routing and account numbers proving the account exists. Then I might consider letting him go for. Okay, now for part 2, I said. Why did you let that guy in your pants in the first place? What did I do to deserve that? Not man enough for you anymore? She teared up slightly. How long have you known? When did you find out? I shook my head silently. You did nothing wrong. We had a great marriage and an active sex life, at least until you got sick with that stomach bug and cut me off. Oh crap, that's when you found out, she said tearfully. She sat casually, not bothering to cover up. Now she looked embarrassed and reached for her clothes. Okay, I said, breaking the silence. When did it begin? About 3 months ago. At first, we didn't even have sex. I'm not sure why I started. We had no problems. Mark flirted a lot, but I didn't take it seriously. One day he said he was unhappy with his sex life at home. Like a fool, I listened. He missed the wild, rough lovemaking he used to have. That night, I jumped your bones. We had amazing lovemaking, but I didn't tell you why. I've thought about that night a lot. The memory of it almost makes me climax. Judy paused, watching me. I stayed silent, clenching my fists. She continued. I wanted that high again, a carnal high. That weekend we screwed like rabbits. The next week, Mark and I talked. I told him about our wild weekend. He hinted he could give me that any time. I laughed, but eventually, I wanted to see if he could. I craved that hard-pounding lovemaking. Finally, I let him try to get me off. That was my downfall. Mark doesn't make love, he screws like a demon. I didn't kiss him or do anything else, I just let him have me. It was hot, I was like, independent, Judy admitted tearfully. I loved you, but with him I could disassociate from reality. It was something I couldn't do with someone I loved. Remember that evening when you got a text about how fine you looked and how Mark wanted to drill you? I asked. Judy nodded. You covered neatly. If you had stopped seeing him, I might have never known. She bristled and said, I hate that word. But you like the idea. You love cheating on me because you kept doing it despite the risk, I said. She shook her head in denial. Well, I hope you have fun with him, I said quietly. Get dressed and leave, our time is up. She looked shocked. Can't you claim me, make me yours again, she pleaded. Bend me over and do me hard until I cry and beg you to stop. Just please don't send me away. I handed her the discarded pants. There's nothing to reclaim. You gave yourself to him, I said without another word. She put on her pants, picked up her shoes and purse and walked outside. She paused, hoping I'd call her back. I'm so sorry, Robert, she said before getting into her car and driving away. I turned off the recordings and made copies, sending the files to the cloud for safekeeping. I called Sergeant Burson. This is Robert LeBlanc. I have a video you might find interesting. While making video copies, my phone alerted me to Judy's call. I'm just driving home from meeting Robert, she said. His memory is perfect. He remembers every detail. I'm glad you didn't come. He might have shot you. Recording the conversation was a bad idea. He called me on it. I stripped unclothed to show I wasn't wired. He's that pissed. I even begged him to take me to bed. What a fool, Mark scoffed. He's a full loser, too chicken for even revenge sex. Good thing he has no proof we're screwing. His claims are worthless. We're screwing, corrected Judy. Yeah, we have to cool it. My wife might be watching me. She needs proof for the prenup. If I can get a split and no alimony, I'd keep the brokerage. I could still earn a living. I can't support myself if Robert divorces me, Judy said, even with alimony. I hope he gets over it. I'll do anything, counseling, a chastity belt, post-nuptial agreement. Why bother with a loser, Mark scoffed. I'll send sales your way to keep you afloat, but we need to keep it quiet. No sex for now, at least until I clear the assault charge. What did he say about taking the money? He said no way. He might go for $100K, but he'd need to see the transfer first. He believes you're lying about the account and wouldn't pay anyway, Judy said. Well, he's probably right. If he contradicted his statement and asked for money, I might spit in his hand, Mark laughed. Maybe give him $25 up front, then accuse him of blackmail if he asked for more. $100K, I could have him liquidated for less. If you say that again, I'll confess to the cops myself, Judy said. I'll make a video confession and give it to others for safekeeping. If Robert so much as gets dizzy and falls, I'll turn you in. Hey Mark, backpedal. I was just spouting off. I'd never do that. I don't think Judy believed him. I was on my toes. I recorded that conversation too. Sergeant Burson came to the camp since it was nearby. I wondered if Mark really had a secret account, but why would he tell anyone? Maybe he revealed it to Judy without thinking, just like he talked about having me liquidated. Burson was impressed with the video of my conversation with Judy, although he didn't comment on her appearance. He took it to the associate district attorney handling the case. This is icing on the cake. We got the forensic results. You had semen spatters on your pants and a smear of semen and vaginal secretions on your leg. We'll compare it with their DNA before the trial. We also found matching spatters on the sofa and carpet, even a few toward the door. It supports your story. We might upgrade the charges against Mark to attempted felony. Judy might be charged too. Your skin and blood were under her fingernails, so she definitely grabbed you. Her claim she was stopping you from pulling your pistol could be used either way. I asked if I had the right to defend myself. Burson explained. A good lawyer can spin things. Mark didn't strike you, but he's a big man who could have. He'll deny saying he'd eliminate you. It comes down to the jury. Since you didn't shoot him, it doesn't matter much, but don't be surprised if his lawyer tries something wild. That evening, my father-in-law called. He heard I'd been hurt but was released from the hospital. We were on a cruise, just got back and turned on our phones. We had messages saying you fell, might die, then that you'd be okay, and finally that you were discharged. Are you okay, Bill? Those messages don't tell the whole story, I replied. I liked him and his wife. I didn't fall, I was pushed. Judy's boss tried to eliminate me. I caught them having sex in my living room. It's a mess. He was shocked. I heard him tell my mother-in-law, who wailed, "You need to talk with Judy and hear her side." I sighed. I'm not at home. We hung up. I called my attorney the next morning to check on the divorce paperwork. Papers were ready. They just needed to know where Judy was. The process server had checked the real estate office and my apartment but found her at neither place. Burson called to say they arrested Mark and Judy at work. He took the audio and video, files to the assistant district attorney, who filed all the charges. The assistant DA wanted to see me. Burson went with me and cautioned me about talking about the bribe to change my story. It could be construed that you were willing if the price was right, he said. I assured him Mark didn't have enough money to buy me off. I wanted the bank information to pass to Julie Danvers. I already called her, and she's having her lawyer look into it. He had me write a statement to that effect. It's to leave the investigating to others. We can't use illegally obtained information. It's called fruit of the poisonous tree, but your video is legal because you're in it. Mark was charged with attempted felony. Judy was charged as an accomplice. The DA didn't think assault charges would stick against her, but didn't want her to get off scot-free. With accomplice charges, she could get a $500 fine and up to 5 years in jail. I thought that was ridiculous. Burson laughed. The law is screwy sometimes. Danvers will likely go down. The DA suggested being lenient on Judy if she testifies against Mark. That seemed like all the satisfaction I'd get. At least Judy wouldn't get off completely. I hated what she did, but didn't want her to be burned too badly. I called my lawyer to tell him where she was. She would be served when released. My brother John came with me to retrieve the rest of my clothes from the apartment. I only wanted my clothes, my desktop computer, and a few pistols I had locked in the safe. Everything else would remind me too much of Judy and the short life we built together. We were nearly done packing the last items when Sandy, Judy's mother, drove up. We were stacking boxes on the landing. She hugged me tightly. "I can't believe my daughter would throw away what she had for a little fling," she tearfully lamented. "Do you think there's any way you could work through this?" Before I could respond, she continued, "I'm not talking about forgiving her right away. I mean after a lot of counseling. Just before Bill and I left on our cruise, Judy mentioned you guys were going to start trying for a baby. We were so excited about that." I looked at Rachel, Judy's year-old sister, who had come with their mother to get some of Judy's things. She was shaking her head. "I can't tell you how much this tears me up." I confessed, "I have video and audio that show just how bad it was. Judy doesn't know I have any of it. Both she and her boyfriend think it's my word against theirs." "You have proof?" Sandy asked, surprised. "Judy made it seem like the affair was just a little fling. She regretted it, but you were totally unforgiving." "This wasn't a little fling. It went on for months. What I have is damning," I said. "Some of it is pretty bad. Nudity, bad language, the works. I don't think you should see it." "Screw that, Robert," Sandy said firmly. "I'm a big girl. You always were polite and avoided cursing in front of Bill and me. I probably use worse language than you, and I know what unclothed people having sex look like, so does Bill. I want to see and hear everything you have. I'm guessing from your demeanor that the files will show my daughter as a complete tramp. It's bad, isn't it?" I nodded. I didn't want Judy to claim I was just an unforgiving idiot over a little indiscretion that went south quickly. "It's bad. I really don't want to hurt you," I said. "I told you I want to see what you have," Sandy insisted. "Cheating pisses me off. I don't care if it was you or Judy. I had plenty of chances to screw around on Bill over the years. Some of the offers were tempting, but I never did. I agreed to give her the audio portion of my meeting with Judy and the other audio files. Judy is going to need your support," I said. "She's in for a tough legal battle." Sandy nodded. "We'll support her, but that doesn't mean we'll condone what she did," Sandy said. I told them I was moving out and Judy could stay, but Sandy said Judy would live with them for now, at Rachel's insistence. She went to pack some of Judy's clothes. "Damn, this is some crap," Rachel said. I agreed. "You only know part of it. I was when you and Judy got together. I was dating a guy on the football team, not having sex, just going out. Mom made a big deal about how Judy hit the jackpot. She found a great guy who would stick by her forever, like Dad. You weren't big and handsome, but decent looking and hot in your own way. Someone a girl could count on to love her, smart and loyal." I laughed. "You're making me sound like a border collie." "A hole," Rachel said, grinning. "You know what I mean. I got to know you. I envied my sister. I dated guys looking for someone like you. Never found one." Rachel hugged me. "I'm just going to say it. If my sister is so dumb she'd give you up, I want you. I've loved you for a long time. I just want you to know I'm here." I didn't know how to react. I hugged Rachel and told her I appreciated her love. She smiled and kissed me, giving me a heart-on. All 3 women in Judy's family had that effect on me. I told Rachel Judy didn't have to move out of the apartment. I would be living at my family's fish camp outside of town. Rachel shook her head. "Mama's pissed. Judy screwed up a good thing. She wants her back at home to tell her how she messed up and to keep an eye on her. I offered for Judy to live with me, but Mom shut that down," Rachel said. "I'm just graduating and Mom doesn't want me settled with Judy. She says I need to live my own life and deal with my own decisions. She repeated that 100 times on the way over. John began carrying my things to the car. The doctor had warned me about strenuous activity, so John was doing all the heavy work. My cast didn't help either. I have your phone number. I know where your fish camp is. Get ready for me, Rachel said with a grin. She leaned forward and whispered. She hoped I might be ready for some exertion soon. Hey there, I heard from behind me. It was Cheryl, the woman from across the landing. I see you're up and about. Then she noticed the boxes on the landing. I hope you aren't trying to carry any of those. You know you're not supposed to lift anything. You had a pretty bad concussion. How did you know how bad I was hurt and what my doctor's orders were? I asked. I want to thank you for helping me when I got hurt. I heard you were right there checking me out. Cheryl tugged at the name tag on her scrub top. I work in critical care right around the corner from where you were. I mainly do cardiac instead of neuro. Greta, the nurse taking care of you, was my roommate in nursing school. I kept tabs on you, she said. The doctor said I only had a little swelling. Yeah, that's like saying you had a little heart attack or a little pregnant, Cheryl laughed. I looked at your chart and we nurses share information on the unit. You had a significant injury. You need to take it easy. Just because they say today's, my advice is to make that a minimum. I knew she was a nurse, but not the details. Judy and I had invited her over a few times. She had shared snippets of her personal life. I liked her. I told her my brother was doing all the carrying and loading. I was only packing my clothes. I thanked her again for saving my life. She snorted. I was scared, to be honest. I don't do neuro, but I was trained. I was afraid you had broken your neck. Cervical breaks can stop respiration. If you quit breathing, I'd have a hell of a time doing CPR in the position you were in. I just loosened your tie and opened the top of your shirt, checking your eyes upside down like that was helping your cranial pressure. But I couldn't do anything to help that. I had nothing to stabilize your neck, so moving you was out of the question. I was glad you didn't start to wake up and move around, but the ambulance arrived pretty quickly. Do you still have the video you took? I asked. She said her mother had taken all the pictures and videos, but she had copies. She asked for my phone number so she could forward them. I watched the video. Rachel looked at it as well. Well, there's no doubt what they were doing. Judy is going to freak out when I tell her about seeing her freshly drilled look. Rachel giggled. Cheryl said, I'm guessing you are Judy's sister. You look like her. We stood there for a minute, then Cheryl gave me a hug, whispering in my ear, You have my number now. Call me when you want to talk to someone out loud, she said. Take care of yourself, Robert. Do everything slow and easy, no exertion. She turned and went to her apartment. I wasn't sure if she put a little extra wiggle in her step, or if it was just my imagination. John was amused as we drove away. Your mother-in-law would jump your bones in a heartbeat if she were single. She is one classy lady, but loves her husband and won't cheat. I looked over at him. Judy's sister wants you too. Now she'll jump. Into your bed quick. All you got to do is let her. I shook my head. Plus that neighbor, the nurse, she wants you too. You think I wasn't listening? Yeah, kinda messed up, but you have options, little brother, he laughed. Halfway to the fish camp, I wanted the divorce to be as easy as possible. I wanted to get it done quickly. I had my lawyer offer Judy that I would pay half her rent and utilities if she stayed in the apartment alone. I'd even pay half her grocery bill as long as it was food bought for her alone and not takeout or at a restaurant. I'd even keep her on my cell phone plan. I offered this support for 2 years, saying she could use that time to get on her feet. Judy's lawyer quickly computed this was far more in her favor than the percentage of my income the law specified. I knew he told her how restrictive it would be, but she accepted my terms and signed. Of course, Judy had bigger things to worry about than our impending divorce. She had been accused of being an accomplice after the fact for helping Mark attempt felony. She was released on her own recognizance. She hadn't been charged the first time, only questioned. Mark Danvers did not fare so well. The charge of attempted felony called for another bail to be set and a percentage paid. Mark only had a little cash available. Julie had taken her 70% of their cash and sealed their investment accounts. He couldn't touch any of that money. He didn't have the $100,000 to pay the bondsman fee. His lawyer was trying to get him a signature loan apparently. Having the community assets locked in a divorce made it difficult to use as collateral. I laughed, imagining him stewing in a jail cell. Mark considered himself a mover and a shaker. Now he was being moved and shaken. Julie was as vindictive as me. I had told her about the alleged secret account in the Caribbean under her son's name. She said she would check it out. To my surprise, the secret account really did exist. Julie's lawyer confirmed it, so she, Julie, and her son flew down to get the money. Her son wasn't on the signature card, but because it was in his name, he could transfer the funds. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when Mark found out his hidden money was gone. Because it was in his son's name, it wasn't part of the community property. To make things worse for poor Mark, he would soon be facing problems with the IRS. He did not follow proper procedure for gifting minors. However it worked out, and whoever paid the taxes, Mark would never get a penny. I loved it. Julie told me later her son split the money evenly with his two siblings, funding their college accounts as well. The Danvers boys were at least honest with each other. Justice is slow. My divorce with Judy was finalized months before her criminal trial. Her trial was linked with Mark's as she was accused of helping him hide his role in my attack. Julie had assured his resources were limited. He still had his of their community assets. But it wasn't much. His real estate agents were ready to quit because of his ruined reputation. Julie got Mark to agree to sign off and sell the franchise. She could have forced the issue, but his signing expedited things. As part of the agreement, he gave up the right to start another brokerage within 50 miles for 5 years. I loved it. He needed the money for his defense, so he agreed. While we waited for the criminal trial, I propositioned Julie for a little roll in the hay. Her initial response was to call me a sick mother. Then a few seconds later she grinned and said, "You really want to stick it to them, don't you?" We laughed about staging a fake video. But then she said if she did anything at all, she'd go for the whole enchilada. In the end, we decided against it. The week before he was to get the money to make bail, she visited him. I went with her. We talked through a plexiglass window. He asked why I was there, and Julie said, "Because I deserve to be." She winked at Mark and grinned. I held my index and middle finger over my mouth and flicked my tongue. Then suddenly, I pushed my index finger through the circle made by my other index finger and thumb. Mark glared and turned red. He paused for a few seconds before reacting. I thought he'd get angry, but I was astonished by his actions. He went ape-crap. I found out later there are many rules when in lockup. One of the main ones is about losing one's temper. Mark picked up his chair and swung it repeatedly against the plexiglass window. He was immediately and painfully subdued. I heard later he was put into segregation for 3 weeks. His bail got delayed and was almost denied altogether because he now posed a threat to both Julie and me. He really should learn to control his temper. At his trial, he spent half his time glaring at me instead of following the testimony. He should never have taken the stand, not after I claimed he wanted to eliminate me. Having called me a loser repeatedly, when asked if he threatened to eliminate me, he said, "I don't remember saying it at first, but right now, I'd make sure of it." Then he began to rant, calling me a lying chicken, a loser, and a few other things that cast aspersions on my father's identity and my mother's species. I have to admit I had deliberately antagonized the man a bit, careful not to be seen. I had just repeated the gestures of pushing one index finger into a circle made by the other index finger and thumb. I had held my index and middle finger in a V and flicked my tongue between them, just a few seconds before. I did it subtly so nobody else noticed. The man was now livid, despite being carefully reserved a few minutes before. His lawyer looked stricken. The forensics bore out the fact he had indeed attacked me and moved me some feet to the top of the stairs where he threw me to my pass-away. Now saying he would eliminate me if he could did not help his case. Mark's lawyer was fairly good. The lawyer tried to convince. The jury Mark was justifiably upset, as his only real crime was having sex with a married woman and defending himself from an angry husband with a weapon. Mark had lost his career, his marriage, and his freedom. He had been stricken a few times in jail. His present state of mind was influenced by PTSD, so his actions should be forgiven. The lawyer managed to cast enough doubt. Mark only got sentenced to 10 years in jail rather than a possible 15, even after he got angry at me in court. Judy was called back to the stand to repeat her testimony. She never heard Mark threaten to eliminate me in the apartment, but on cross-examination by the DA, she admitted he had said he might hire somebody to eliminate me. She was very upset at Mark's violent rant in the courtroom. She had said earlier that it was Mark who had originally concocted the story of how he was merely visiting her and I overreacted, then ran. When Mark stood up to confront me, She admitted the fall was not accidental, but a very deliberate action on Mark's part. At her own trial, she repeated that testimony, saying she was terrified at the time and thought I was dead. She agreed to support Mark's lie. She was sentenced to a year in the parish jail, but the DA suggested it be suspended. The judge disagreed and wanted her to serve 3 months, at least, considering her original false statement to the police. Judy came to see me when she got out. She wanted to apologize for cheating on me. We had not talked in private since the day we talked at the fish camp. I also want to thank you for not spreading the video you took when we talked, she said. It was bad enough you gave Mom the audio portion. I was a strumpet to strip and beg like that, but I wanted to be your strumpet. Mom gave me a little crap about that, but she really read me the riot act for cheating on you and destroying our marriage. It was bad enough just knowing what I did, but she saw the video Cheryl's mom took. She told me if you weren't such a gentleman, you'd have let everybody see me unclothed and freshly screwed, disgracing the whole family. I knew she would. Is there any way we can get back together? I was hoping with counseling or a postnup. Well, it would be a prenup now. I shook my head. A prenup didn't stop Mark. I got stupid. I should have talked to you. Can we stay friends? I mean, we'll need to if you date my sister. Rachel told me she wants to get with you someday. I told her I had written that off as well. Judy left after wishing me well and hoping I would forgive her someday. While I liked Rachel and the whole family, there was no way it would work. It would only cause friction in the family eventually, and although I was still hurt by her disrespect, I did not want her family to suffer. I wondered how Mark was handling life in jail. I laughed at the thought, betting he got into a fight or two. I'm trying to find out how he's doing, Julie said. She's going to visit him with her boys since 2 are under 18. She has to go along. She wants to ask him if he's giving head to fellow inmates when the boys can't hear. I did hear about Mark a few months later. He was moved to a new unit after being in segregation. I didn't know what he did, but they apparently did not like his attitude. He was found unconscious in a corner of the shower room, obviously kicked repeatedly in the groin. Most of his toiletries were shoved up his rectum, a full bar of soap followed by his toothbrush and toothpaste. Once those were removed, it was clear he had been sodomized first. I sent him a smiley face greeting card saying, "If you think I paid someone to do it, well, you are absolutely right." Throughout my court hearings, I made some friends who had connections in the jail administration. They knew people behind bars who really needed cigarette money. Although she called me several times trying to change my mind, I never did date Rachel, Judy's sister. She argued her parents thought it wouldn't be a problem, and Judy was on board with us getting together, but I knew it would eventually cause friction. I broke off all contact, though I occasionally saw one of them around town. Judy moved to Shreveport and got a job as a sales rep for a small manufacturing company. I imagine a woman as attractive as her had an active sex life. I also had an active sex life with Cheryl. Cheryl and I dated, and then she moved in with me. A year later, we got married and decided to have a baby right away. Good communication is crucial for us, and she shares my views on fidelity. I know I'll have to be careful someday when Mark gets out of prison. I have hope he gets shivved. Maybe I need to spend some more cigarette money. Okay, I'm still a bit of a prick, but only to those who try to hurt me.
Phone. You probably had the wrong number, a-hole. Why didn't you just walk or get a ride back to the party? 2's company, but 3's a crowd, he muttered under his breath. What did you say, you a-hole? Are you insinuating I did something wrong? Screw you. You can kiss my butt. You maggot. You really think I did something wrong? Alistair looked at me coolly. If the shoe fits, wear it. I could practically feel steam pouring out of my ears. I was beyond furious. Screw you, a-hole. Don't even think about coming upstairs to my bedroom. You can sleep down here. I stomped up the stairs, my mind a whirlwind of rage. I was too pissed to even check on the kids. My thoughts were scattered, and I wasn't thinking straight. Once I got to my bedroom, I slammed the door and locked it to make sure Alistair couldn't come in. As I stood there, panting with anger, I wondered why I went off on him like that. He hadn't actually done anything wrong. Deep down, I knew it was my guilty conscience from cheating on him that fueled the outburst. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning in the dark. In the morning, I finally checked my phone. It was turned off. When I turned it back on, I had a bunch of phone messages and a few text messages from Alistair. Damn, he was right. He did call, and I sure screwed this all up. For the next 6 weeks, we avoided each other, almost like 2 cats on a hot tin roof. I was starting to get over the guilty feel, even though I am still having sex with Henry at the office. Sometimes our boss Logan Carter would join us for a threesome. It did not seem to bother me anymore that I was cheating on Alistair. I knew that my law firm would protect me. Things started to calm down in May. Alistair is back sleeping in my bed, but I still won't have any sex with him. I really don't know why I am punishing him by withholding sex. I guess I am still somewhat pissed at him. There again, I don't know why I am still mad at him. Memorial weekend, my mom and dad were taking the kids up to their cabin on Higgins Lake for the long weekend. Mom told me it was time for me to reconnect with my husband. Alistair took me out for a real nice dinner Friday night. We went dancing afterwards. It felt like we were a married couple again. When we got home, I let him have sex with me. I even participated a little bit. Saturday morning, Alistair made a nice breakfast, and when we finished cleaning up the kitchen, he told me he wanted to talk with me. We went into the living room, and he explained about his company conference in Florida. I started to get excited, until he told the dates. It took place over the same weekend that my company has a dinner and dance. There is no way that I am going to miss my company's function. We ended up having a major blow-up over the dates and functions. Sometimes Alistair can be a major a-hole. He went out to cut the grass, and I left to spend money on me for the dinner dance. I got home around 5 p.m., and Alistair is sleeping on the couch. I sneaked up the stairs with my packages and hid them in my closet. The rest of the weekend, we did not speak to each other. We had another fight as he and the kids were leaving for his conference. God, he can piss me off at times. What an a-hole he can be. Well, I have the house to myself for the rest of week and weekend. This should be a very restful week. The next 3 days just flew by. I realized that I never missed the kids or Alistair. I never gave them a call, and they never called me. So we are even. Saturday finally arrived, and I spent the whole day in the beauty salon getting ready for the party. I had the works done, hair, makeup, fingernails, and toenails painted. I went home and got dressed. The party started at 6 p.m., and I arrived 20 minutes late to make an entrance. I knew that I looked fabulous. I am sitting at a table with my boss Henry and his wife, and our senior partner Logan Carter and his wife. They had a single junior lawyer as my date. A junior partner and his wife rounded out our table. I did not know that they had some bedrooms upstairs at the country club. I had a great time drinking wine and dancing. Oh yes, and I had sex with Logan twice and the 3 partners once each. I even screwed my date twice. I got home around 3 a.m. sore all over. My feet hurt from dancing so much. Thank God that Alistair is not home. I don't think I could have sex with another man. I shed my clothes and crawled into bed. I got up at noon and took a nice long bath. I cleaned the house and got the clothes all washed. I knew that the kids should be home around 5 p.m. Right on cue, they drove into the driveway. I completely ignored Alistair and hugged my 2 kids and asked them all about their vacation. I knew that pissed Alistair off, but so what, screw him. A couple of weeks after the 4th of July, Henry started talking about the lawyers' conference at the Grand Traverse Resort in Traverse City. He told me, Kathy, you are going to this conference, but not your husband. We don't bring our spouses to this conference. The 3 partners will be there, and they expect a repeat of the dinner and dance we had last month. I am excited about going to the conference. When I told Alistair about it, he just shrugged. Prick. He couldn't bring down my good mood, though. I even gave him a couple of mercy sex to keep him happy. It's finally Sunday, the day we are supposed to leave. I am packed and ready to go. We are all meeting at the office, where we will divide up into cars and head north. It was an unbelievable conference. I hardly ever left the room. There seemed to be always one of the guys there to screw me silly. For 6 days, I screwed each of the 4 guys, and maybe some other guys. By the time I got home Saturday, I was whipped and screwed out. I spent Friday night with Henry, and I could not believe what he said to me. I want to really hurt your husband, he said. What do you want to do to him? I want you to have my baby. What? I want you to stop taking your birth control pills, and next month stop screwing him. I am to be your only partner till you get pregnant. This way we can make him a true cuck and have him raise our child. Oh, that sounds exciting. I will stop taking my pills right now. My period starts next week, and by the middle of September, I should be ready to conceive your child. Henry got me pregnant in September, and our plan was to have Alistair screw me silly as soon as we knew that I am pregnant. Unfortunately, Alistair did not buy into our plan, and no matter how much I tried in the next couple of months, I could never get Alistair to screw me in my fertile time of the month. Henry, Alistair has not made love to me in 2 months. It will be hard to pin my pregnancy on him, I said. Don't worry, baby, we will string him up to dry and force him to accept this child. I have a couple of ideas on just what to do to keep him in line, he said. In November, Henry informed me about a company cruise right after Christmas for both spouses and children. The cruise would start the 27th of December and return on January 2nd. Kathy, you should bring your kids and husband for this cruise, he told me. Screw Alistair. He can stay home, but I would love to take this cruise with my 2 kids, I replied. We had an odd Thanksgiving, where he went to his mother's house by himself, and I took the kids with me to my folks' house. Of course, my mother could not shut up about why Alistair was not with us for Thanksgiving dinner. We fought the whole month of December on whether the kids will go with me or not on the cruise. Finally, just before Christmas I gave in and decided to go by myself. I am so pissed at Alistair for doing this to me. He is denying me a chance to have a vacation with the kids, just like he did last summer in Florida. December just flew by, and it was Christmas Day. Alistair and I put on an Academy Award-winning show for both the kids and our folks. We acted like the most lovey-dovey couple, fooling both folks that things were never better for us. I could not wait for the cruise to start. Finally, it is time to leave for my company cruise. I had a great time on the cruise. There was never a shortage of men for me to be entertained by. That includes the top 4 from my company. It was a refreshing cruise for me to recharge my batteries. I got home Saturday night, and the house is empty. There is a note on the table from Alistair that he and the kids would be home Monday evening. Little did I know that the dam was about to break. Monday morning at about 10 minutes before 10 a.m., I was called by Henry to come to the main conference room. When I got there, the 3 partners and Henry Miles were waiting for me. Ethan Whitman will be here at 10 a.m. to meet with all of us. You don't have any idea why he wants to meet with us, do you? He asked. I don't know who Ethan Whitman is, I replied. He was a former partner of this firm, Henry told me. I was kind of shocked. I did not know that there was a 4th partner. I just shook my head and kept my mouth shut. There is a knock on the door, and Logan's secretary let Ethan in the conference room. Well, Ethan, we are all here. What is it that is so important that you need to talk with all of us? Logan Carter said. Well, I am here representing Austin James Kelly in his divorce from Allison Joyce Kelly, Ethan said. I gave a loud gasp as the rest tried to all talk at once. My ears were buzzing. My eyes started to mist over. Everyone was talking, but it seemed like I was not hearing just what is being said. I started to feel faint. Ethan, what is going on here? Why are we all here for a divorce case? This should be handled between you and whoever Kathy gets for an attorney, Logan said. Well, you might be right, Logan, but you see there is a whole lot more here at stake than just a simple divorce. I have in my custody some information that needs to be reviewed by all 5 of you. I think that a few days should be enough for you all to review this information. Let's say that we all meet back here Friday morning at 10 a.m. Ethan said as he passed out the envelopes with Alistair's demands, the PI report, pictures, and the 2 discs. Also included were the divorce papers. Ethan got up and said to Logan, if you have any question or need me for something, you know my phone number. If I don't hear anything, I will meet you all Friday morning 10 a.m. After Ethan left the conference room, Henry walked over to me and sat down. Kathy, you don't look so good. Are you going to be all right? Henry asked me. I just nodded my head okay. He got up and walked back to his chair and sat down and started to review the information. Well, let's see just what Ethan has that he is so proud of, Logan said. While they reviewed the PI report and looked the pictures over, I started to read Alistair's demands. He wants my children. There is no way he is getting my children in a million years. He can't take my children, can he? I cried. Henry came over again and sat down next to me. Now, Kathy, calm down. Let us get through all this information, then we can start making a plan of attack, he said to me. I just nodded and sobbed onto his shoulder while he stroked my hair. He nodded at the other 3 to continue reading while he calmed me down. It looks like most of the information he has won't be admissible evidence in a court of law. He can file for divorce on a couple of motions, but in Michigan it is a no-fault state, and everything will be split 50-50ths. He would have to prove that Kathy is an unfit mother to gain custody of the children, and she would also get the house. I wonder just what he is fishing for with this entire stack of paper. Let us watch these 2 discs and see just what is on them, Logan said. You guys watch it and fill me in. Let me get Kathy out of here and back into her office. It will give her a chance to catch her breath and calm down, Henry said. The other 3 nodded their heads in agreement, and Henry led me out of the conference room. A couple days later on a Thursday afternoon, we all met in the conference room to discuss the results of the study done on the information that Ethan had given all of us. I had watched the video and listened to the audio and knew things did not sound really good for us. This is a mess, even though he can't use this information in a divorce case. If this got out, we will all be divorced and clients will leave us, and we will be ruined. This is the purest form of a blackmail case if I ever had seen one, Logan said. For the next 3 hours, we discussed every angle of the information that Ethan had left with us. The final results were that Logan, as president of the firm, would meet with Ethan tomorrow alone to try and feel him out on just what he planned to do with the information. It is Friday morning, and Logan's secretary ushered Ethan into Logan's office. Logan, is it just you and me for this meeting?" Ethan said. "Let's stop the posturing, Ethan. All this evidence that you have is inadmissible in court, and you know it." "Maybe so, Logan, maybe so, but I don't control this information. Alistair does. He told me that he has it all set up so the information that I gave you will be made public, including to all of your wives. That includes your client list and media outlets. Is this what you want, Logan? If that happens, then Ethan, I will sue you and Mr. Kelly. I will break both of you in half." "Logan, I don't control what happens with that information. Only Mr. Kelly does. And he doesn't care. It seems that your firm broke up his marriage by making his wife the company hooker. He will release that information, and you can do whatever you want to do. But the damage will be done." "Okay, Ethan, where do we go from here? Do you talk for the other four?" "Yes, we all agreed that I would be lead counsel on this matter. You read his list of demands. Also, he wants this divorce rushed through the courts. That is something that we both can make happen. Once the divorce is final, the rest of this will blow over. What assurance do I have that the information will never be released?" "I don't have an answer for that question. I know that he is using the information as protection against retribution that you might take. So that is how I lost my children to that prick Alistair. I will never forgive him for doing this to me. I will never get a chance to watch my children grow up. I think that if I was not pregnant with Henry's baby, I would probably in all likelihood kill myself. I just hope that sometime in the future, Alistair will have a change of heart and at least let me visit my 2 children. It has been 5 years since Alistair left and took my 2 kids with him. I have forgiven him for doing this to me, but I sure would love to see my 2 children again. It is May, and Alice's birthday is next month. I stopped at my folks' house to talk with Mom. I wanted to plan a nice party for Alice. Mom, next month is Alice's birthday, and I would like to plan a nice party here, so the kids can use your pool. What do you think?" I asked. She has this big shit-eating grin on her face. This is so unlike my mother not to voice her opinion. It is almost like she is dangling me on a fish hook. "I have a better idea. How about we take you and Alice on a trip with us to see your children in Switzerland?" she said. I'm stunned. I think my mouth moved, but no words seemed to come out of my mouth. "Oh, Kathy, close your mouth before you catch some flies in it. Alistair invited you and Alice to join us in our next trip to see our grandchildren. I think this would be a great birthday gift to Alice to see her stepbrother and sister. What do you think? Do you want us to get tickets for the 2 of you to join us on our trip in June?" Of course, I said yes, and in June we left for Switzerland. It was a great trip. Alistair and Maria were very nice to me. I could see that they are very much in love with each other. I could see just what I gave up, and it just crushed me. I made some horrible mistakes, and it cost me dearly. Someday I hope to have what they have in each other. It was great to see my 2 kids, and we had a very good time together. Man, how the time just flew. Before I knew it, it was time to leave. Alistair and Maria were great host and hostess, and they invited us back for Christmas in Switzerland. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Today is my younger brother's wedding day, and his fiancée, Emma, has just launched herself at me. Her voice rang out so loud that everyone could hear, cutting through me like a sharp knife. The very thought of my brother's wedding had filled me with joy, but why am I standing here, being humiliated in front of our family? The pain from her words settled deep in my chest and spread through my body. The warm atmosphere of celebration seemed to dim instantly, and a chilly silence filled the room. Was I the only one feeling shaken, or had the guests also started to look at me with judgment? I could feel the weight of their cold stares, as if everyone here silently agreed that I didn't belong. "You shouldn't be coming around here. It's just you don't really belong here, Jane." Emma's sharp eyes made it clear she thought I was a burden. "You have no place here," her gaze seemed to say. I felt the urge to speak up, to defend myself, but every time I tried to find words, they got caught in my throat. Anger, sadness, frustration, they tangled inside me, too overwhelming to sort through. Every breath felt tight, and my legs started to shake. As much as I wanted to deny it, I couldn't help feeling that maybe she was right. Had I depended too much on Kevin? I'd leaned on my younger brother over the years, maybe even without realizing how much of a burden I'd become. It's true that my presence might have been straining their relationship. Then maybe I was the problem. But even if that's true, she didn't have to say it like this. Emma's words had only one purpose: to make sure I knew my place. "I understand," I said. The words came out as if someone else was speaking them. I could barely recognize my own voice. It was quiet, rough, drained. But that was all I could say. I stood up calmly, trying my best to keep it together. I wanted to stay and at least see the ceremony through to the end, but I knew I couldn't stay in this room any longer. The thought of tainting Kevin's happy day with my presence was unbearable. I took a step toward the door, feeling like I was slipping out of my own life. Just as I reached for the door handle, there was a loud crash behind me. I turned and saw that a chair had fallen over. My name is Jane, and I'm 32 years old. I often wonder how different things would have been if that accident hadn't happened. Kevin and I lost our parents when I was 11 and he was just 8. They were coming back from a weekend trip when the accident occurred. By the time we got to the hospital, both of them were gone. It felt like the world had gone silent. I didn't know how to process the reality in front of me. The only clear memory I have is of Kevin's small hand shaking in mine. After that, we went to live in a children's home. The staff there were kind, and we quickly got along with the other kids. But no matter how familiar our surroundings became, there was always a hollow ache inside me. I wanted to see Kevin smile, so I promised myself I wouldn't cry in front of him. I thought if I cry, he'll be sad too. Being a big sister became my reason to keep going. I didn't deal with my own loss. Instead, I focused entirely on taking care of Kevin. Taking care of him gave me purpose. When I turned 18, I had to leave the children's home. There were programs to help us pursue college, but I chose not to use them. If anyone was going to college, it had to be Kevin. I started working during the day and attended night classes at a vocational school. I studied event planning. I had a small dream of starting my own business someday, but that dream felt distant. My main goal was to support Kevin. I even took out loans to make sure he could go to college. I knew a scholarship could help, but I didn't want Kevin to worry about finances. While I worked, Kevin was working hard at his studies. Watching him study fueled my resolve to support him however I could. And Kevin didn't let me down. He graduated from college and landed a job at a large company. I couldn't hold back my tears when I heard the news. All those years of hard work and debt were finally worth it. As long as I could see him happy, every struggle felt meaningful. After starting his job, Kevin began sending me $1,500 a month. I wanted to tell him to keep the money for himself, but his message left me speechless. "Sis, you did everything for me. Not giving something back would feel wrong. Please accept this." Reading his words, I cried again. It moved me to know he recognized my sacrifices. But I also felt a strong sense that I couldn't keep relying on him. So I quietly started saving the money. I wanted to return it to him one day if he ever needed help. With the skills I had learned in school, I started a small event planning company. At first, I worked alone, but over time, business grew and I became busier. Kevin started helping me on weekends, even though his job was demanding. Then one day, Kevin told me he had started dating someone, Emma. She worked at a partner company, and Kevin seemed thrilled. Seeing his happiness made me genuinely happy for him. But I also felt an odd pang. Was it loneliness? The fear of losing him? I congratulated him, smiling, but inside I felt a mixture of emotions. Emma seemed like a good person. She made Kevin happy, and when we met, she appeared polite and kind. But sometimes her smiles felt a bit distant. When we met with Emma's family for a pre-wedding dinner, that feeling became even clearer. We gathered at a nice Japanese restaurant. Emma's parents were sophisticated, but something about them felt subtly dismissive. "Kay, you've come so far growing up in a children's home. I mean, how admirable," her mother said. Her words seemed harmless, but they stung. Her tone was friendly, yet her eyes held a judgmental gaze. "I wouldn't have come this far without my sister," Kevin answered politely, but his voice was tense. He always spoke proudly about our past, but here it felt like he was holding back. I wanted to speak up, but I couldn't ruin Kevin's happiness. After dinner, he told me not to worry, but his words only made the pain sharper. I could see he was hurt too, but he was doing his best to make things work. I wanted him to be happy above all else. Despite the uneasy feeling, I tried to connect with Emma. As the wedding plans went on, I spent time with her reviewing guest lists, picking out dresses. Emma was always polite, but there was still a coldness in her manner. "Is Kevin still sending you money?" Her question hit me like a stone. Honestly, I think it's a bit much now that we're getting married. Our finances should come first. I felt speechless. I knew she wasn't entirely wrong, but she couldn't understand. To Kevin, that money was more than repayment. It was a symbol of the life we built together. Still, Emma had a point. It was probably time to draw a line. That night, I decided to talk to Kevin. "Emma doesn't seem too happy about the money, does she?" "I figured she'd bring it up," he said, looking resigned but determined. "Maybe it's time to stop, Kevin. You have a family to focus on now." My heart ached as I said it. "I'm not stopping, Jane. You've done so much for me. I can't just quit now." His words brought tears to my eyes, but I couldn't let him see that. "All right, Kevin. I understand." I knew that forcing him to stop would only make him more determined. For now, I'd let him make his choice. The wedding day finally came. I did everything I could to support their happiness. Kevin's happiness was all I'd ever wanted, but deep down, I still had an uneasy feeling. Would Emma really be the one to support him the way he needed? The ceremony went smoothly, and I felt a wave of relief. Watching Kevin smile gave me a sense of peace, as though all my sacrifices had been worth it. But then, during the reception, the unexpected happened. "Please stop coming to visit, Kevin." Her words were like a knife to my heart. The room went silent, and I felt every gaze turned toward me. I stood there, stunned, unable to respond. I could feel my face go pale, my heart sinking. Emma's gaze was sharp, as if to say I didn't belong here. I wanted to say something, but no words came out. My throat tightened with anger, sadness, and humiliation. I managed to say the only thing I could. "I understand." My own voice sounded distant and unfamiliar. I tried to keep my composure, to leave without causing more of a scene. But just as I reached for the door, I heard a loud crash. I turned around to see Kevin standing, his face filled with anger. "Emma, do you even know what you just said?" Emma looked taken aback, but couldn't shake off his grip. "You don't know anything about what she's done for me," Kevin said. His voice was low, but filled with rage. "Without my sister, I wouldn't be here today. She sacrificed everything to make my dreams possible." His words rang through the room, and nobody dared interrupt. "I send her money every month because it's the least I can do for what she's given up for me. That's not charity. It's respect and gratitude." Emma stood frozen, shock and fear in her eyes. The family and guests around us began murmuring. "I've known Jane my whole life. She's always put others before herself." One by one, my relatives and friends started speaking up. "She helped Kevin through so much. We all know how much she's done for this family." Emma's face turned pale as the guests voiced their support for me. Then one of Kevin's colleagues stepped forward. "Honestly, Emma can be difficult at work. She's known for her sharp tongue." Another colleague joined in. "It's true. She can be overly harsh, always pushing others down." Slowly, her colleagues revealed sides of Emma I hadn't known. With each confession, Emma's face grew paler, realizing the respect she thought she'd earned was slipping away. Just then, the doors opened, and a man entered the room. He was impeccably dressed, a quiet strength radiating from him. "My apologies for being late. Mr. Jameson, welcome." Mr. Jameson was a prominent figure, a senior manager from a major business partner of Emma's family's company. "Is something the matter here?" "Oh, no, Mr. Jameson. Just a family misunderstanding." "I see," he said, but his eyes told me he sensed more than he let on. "You must be Jane. I've heard impressive things about your event planning company." "Thank you, Mr. Jameson." I was surprised that he knew about my work. "Jane is a foster home graduate. I'm sure we'll want to evaluate partnerships with that in mind," Emma's father said dismissively. "Actually, I grew up in foster care myself." The room fell silent, and Emma's father's face went pale. "I've always respected those who push through adversity. Jane's work reflects that spirit. At our company, we choose partners based on merit, not background. Excluding someone due to their past would be against our values. His words filled me with pride and gratitude. Jane's been a pillar for our community. Emma's words were out of line. I agree. Our family deserves better. Kevin's words rang with finality. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect my family. Emma looked stricken but couldn't protest. Kevin walked over and hugged me tightly. Thank you, Jane, for everything. Thank you, Kevin. I'll always be here for you. That moment marked a new beginning. Over time, my business grew thanks to Mr. Jameson's support. I became known for my dedication and creativity in event planning, and Kevin became my business partner, helping us take on new challenges together. We've come so far, Jane. We have, and I'm grateful for every step. In the end, our bond only strengthened, creating a life full of support and new opportunities. Together, we continue to move forward, building a brighter future side by side.
"Chris, why are you home?" inquired Angela, my spouse for 28 years, as she entered through the garage and saw me at our kitchen table less than 10 feet away. Her body partially blocked a tall, younger man following her into our home. Angela, consistently beautiful, stands at a striking 5 feet 9 inches, weighing a healthy 145 pounds, with auburn hair falling over her shoulders. She always dresses professionally for work, and today, in a white blouse, an extra button undone, revealed enticing cleavage between her spectacular 38D cup chest. A black linen skirt highlighted her world-class legs, and 3-inch heels perfectly shaped the cheeks of her backside. Briefly contemplating Angela's seemingly foolish question, I responded by stating that I lived there. A quick flash of irritation, which had been increasingly prevalent over the past weeks, surfaced as she inquired about the reason for my presence at home at 3:30 in the afternoon. I often jest with anyone who will listen that I loved Angela since we first met. Meeting her as the administrative assistant for 4 top executives in her company, she escorted me to the senior suite for hours of meetings. Taking a chance, I asked her to dinner as she walked me back to the lobby, and the rest is history. By now, Angie's companion had maneuvered around her and stood at her side. Anticipating a smirk, I was surprised to see concern in his intelligent eyes. Clearly, things weren't going as planned. I couldn't help but question Angie about the reason for her early arrival home, an hour and a half earlier than expected. Angela and I have been inseparable since our first date. I dedicated all my energy to her and our family, establishing a successful insurance brokerage firm. With the assistance of her employer, Angela achieved a bachelor's degree in 6 years, progressing from a support role to leading HR in the company's Hartford, Connecticut office. Having loved Angela unconditionally for nearly 3 decades, I faced the transformation she had undergone with determined calmness. Desiring to break her as effectively as she broke me, I gave Angie my signature crooked grin, prompting her response, "We came home early to talk with you." I questioned Angie about the collective reference to "we" locking eyes with her. Taking advantage of the moment to introduce himself, her companion confidently stated that he was Michael Browner, the new attorney at Kellerman & Sons, closely collaborating with Ong for the past couple of months. Despite his extended hand, which I ignored, and while maintaining eye contact with Angie, I refrained from reacting violently, opting to growl and assert that I knew exactly who and what he was. For the first time, I noticed signs of concern in my wife, and she cringed when I mentioned Ong. "You once threatened severe consequences for anyone who called you Ong. Why tolerate such disrespect in your own home from this individual I'm referring to as Mofo?" I pointed in his direction. Angie, habitually worried and confused, is a meticulous planner. I was certain she and Mofo had meticulously planned for every possible scenario for this conversation, with every I dotted and every T crossed. In her perception, I was already a compliant, betrayed man. A quick glance at Mofo brought a smile to my face. I was fairly certain his sphincter muscle was tightening, soon to be clenched as tightly as mine. A tumultuous situation was brewing, unlike anything Angie and her companion could envision. Taking 2 or 3 deep, cleansing breaths, I endeavored to push aside the growing rage and disgust into a quiet corner of my heart. Internally, I resolved to proceed, thinking it was time to disrupt their plans once more. I suggested the idea of making 3 drinks and proposed discussing matters in the living room. Angie requested a subdued glass of wine. When turning to the other person, he appeared wary. Responding to my offer, he mentioned Angela's information about my liking for bourbon and craft beer. Nodding, I confirmed as I rose from the kitchen table and headed to the family room's bar. Exiting the room, I heard immediate, urgent whispering as they moved through the kitchen to the living room. A few minutes later, I joined them. They sat together on the sofa. Handing Angie her favorite Merlot and Mofo a tulip glass of ambre ale, I settled into an armchair across from them. After raising my glass in salute, I took a sip of the fiery liquid. Returning the toast, Mofo sipped his beer, studying the color and carbonation. He made a remark about the complexity of the amber ale, asking about its identity. I responded that it was Pabst Blue Ribbon. At the mention of the beer, Mofo's eyes flared with anger, and Angie, appearing confused, mentioned my previous claim that Pabst Blue Ribbon was worse than donkey urine and considered the worst beer ever made. She was midway through her comment when she saw me laughing. She expressed her frustration, stating that I was being rude and condescending during what was supposed to be a calm conversation. I responded with a smile, questioning her accusation and suggesting that we needed to kickstart our conversation properly. I anticipated learning about having a polite, uplifting, and loving discussion from my wife. Angie cringed and avoided eye contact. S. White took over, beginning to discuss matters. I interrupted, directing my attention to him and pointing out his initial use of Mr. Harrington before presumptuously switching to calling me Chris. I insisted on being addressed as Mr. Harrington. As his face began to redden, I concluded with a shrug and suggested the alternative of addressing me as Sir. Instead of allowing S. White to continue, I turned to Angie and asked with heat, inquiring about the topic she wanted to discuss. When S. White seemed prepared to respond, I interjected, informing him that I was addressing my wife and instructing him to sit there, drink his complex amber ale, and remain quiet. Angie, in a state of fury, expressed her discontent with my behavior that afternoon, insisting that it needed to stop. I nodded, giving the appearance of contemplating her request, and posed a question about whether my behavior was better or worse than hers over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Angie, partially confused and worried, asked for clarification. Mofo seemed to hold his breath, perhaps thinking their carefully crafted plan had derailed. Locking eyes with Angie, I revealed that I was disturbed, expressing my uncertainty about what upset me more, her involvement with someone else, or her treating me like an imbecile. Angela's expression showed her astonishment. Her eyes narrowed, and she, in a hushed voice, mentioned having more friends at my office than I did. She received an anonymous email 2 weeks ago, warning about my alleged affair. The email included 3 attachments depicting me on a picnic lunch at Middlewoods Park, engaging in hand-holding and kissing. Apologizing for the way she found out, Angela was in the process of figuring out how to continue when I interjected, asking if she wanted a divorce. She responded negatively, moving to the edge of the couch, leaning forward, resting her elbows on her knees, and passionately expressing her love for me. Angela clarified that her involvement with Michael was a short-term fling, explaining that he was new to Connecticut and hadn't made many friends. She anticipated him finding a regular girlfriend once he was settled. Apologetic, she acknowledged that the situation didn't work for her, as she had signed up for a monogamous relationship with a loving wife. She concluded by stating that she was sorry, but a divorce would better align with her future plans. Angela pleaded with me to stop, expressing her disinterest in a divorce and suggesting that I probably felt the same. She characterized her involvement with Michael as a one-time fling, emphasizing that it was nothing more and that it stemmed from her attraction to him and a desire for extra excitement in her life. She assured me that it had never happened before and would soon be over, promising that it would never occur again. After taking a small sip of my bourbon, I remained silent for a few moments before responding. I pointed out that her promises held no meaning and asserted that everyone in the room knew she was a liar. Anticipating Angela's reaction, I continued, questioning why I should believe this was her first affair and suggesting that it could be her 51st. I urged her to think about our shared efforts in building a family, and mentioned that, with Kelly married and contemplating starting her own family, we could now slow down and plan for a wonderful retirement. I expressed the belief that in a few years my fling with Michael would be long over and forgotten. I rose from my seat and, without inquiring if anyone desired another drink, walked to the din and replenished my glass. I was certain my lack of courtesy did not go unnoticed by the two individuals in the living room. Upon my return, I observed them huddled together and engaged in a whispered conversation. Mofo sought permission to speak, asking if he could express a few things. In response, I allowed him the floor with a disgusted reply. After gathering his thoughts, he conveyed that Angela was correct in characterizing their relationship as a short-term fling. He expressed regret for getting involved with a married woman, emphasizing that it was something he had never done before. Acknowledging the connection they shared, he spoke about Angela's exceptional qualities. While understanding my mention of divorce in the heat of the moment, he cautioned against it in the long term, noting the decades we had invested together and advising against throwing it away. Additionally, he mentioned Angela's initial concerns about the prenuptial agreement, suggesting its vulnerability due to its age and changes in the legal landscape. He dismissed its enforceability, claiming proof of infidelity was lacking. I pondered how my wife had become so misguided as he concluded his legal summation. Turning to Angela, I expressed my inability to understand her choice of seeking legal advice from a corporate attorney who graduated in the bottom quarter of his class from Texas Southern University Law School, a consistently ranked among the top 10 worst law schools in the country. I questioned how she knew that S-Wipe didn't finish, explaining that knowing one's enemy was one of my mottos. Redirecting my attention to Angela, I inquired about her plan moving forward. After taking a few moments to think, she disclosed that she and Michael were spending the weekend together. She detailed their itinerary, mentioning her presence at his apartment that night and a trip to New York City the next day. They planned to stay there Friday and Saturday night, with her returning home on Sunday. Despite being aware of their exact plans, the audacity of my wife's statement deeply saddened me. I expressed my disappointment, hoping she could perceive the profound sadness in my eyes. I pointed out the impact on our quarterly getaway weekend tradition to New York City, filled with memories of spectacular sights and heartwarming experiences such as award-winning Broadway plays, concerts, and sporting events. I conveyed my feelings about the tarnishing of those memories and expressed concern about the change in Angela, comparing her to the person she was involved with. Angela sensed my devastation and responded accordingly, but I was too consumed by the voices in my head urging me to end it. Turning to a very concerned Mofo, I questioned him about his wife's reaction to his involvement with mine. Angela urged me to stop, explaining that Michael was a widower and his wife had passed away several years ago. Even Mofo displayed some decency, cringing at my wife's last statement. I smirked and addressed Angela, remarking on the contrast between Michael and her. Without pause, I inquired about her being widowed, and Michael hesitantly confirmed it. I reached down and retrieved a manila folder from the backpack next to my chair. After opening it and scanning the first page, I revealed details about Michael's late wife, Dr. Cynthia Browner. She was an emergency department surgeon at Ascension St. John's Hospital in Detroit, with a husband, Michael, and two daughters, Katie and Lacey. The document mentioned her resignation and relocation to the Hartford, Connecticut area to join her husband immediately after her children finished school. Despite my dissatisfaction with my marriage, I couldn't help but find the look on Angela's face amusing. Angela confronted me about the revelation, asking if I had lied to her. In response, I couldn't contain my laughter, expressing amusement at the situation of a cheat and a liar accusing each other of dishonesty. Michael intervened by reaching out and cupping Angela's hand. Just before I could protest, anger boiling inside me, I realized something unsettling. I just didn't have the energy to care anymore. Angela's companion Ong began apologizing, confessing to his deceit and professing his desire for her. It was sickening to hear. He stood there, holding her hand, making plans for their future together as if I didn't even exist. Angela, after a brief moment of contemplation, took his hand and turned to face me, promising to cut ties with Michael and return to being the loving wife she claimed to be. As they exchanged words, my heart sank further, It was like watching my world crumble before my eyes. Finally, I gathered the strength to speak up. I requested their attention, asking for the chance to lay out my thoughts and feelings, to be heard amidst their betrayal. They exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of how to respond to my request for fairness. I pushed the issue, emphasizing the importance of giving me just 30 minutes of their time. After some reluctance, they finally acquiesced and took their seats. With practiced ease, I set up several Zoom meetings, a skill I had honed during the COVID-19 pandemic. As the TV screen flickered to life, I addressed Peter and Lou, asking if they could hear me. Once the introductions were made, I stunned Angela and her companion by revealing the presence of Lou Baird, my new divorce attorney, and Michael Browner, a corporate attorney. Handing the floor over to the attorneys, Lou wasted no time in laying out the situation. He informed Angela, now addressed as Mrs. Harrington, that he was representing me in our impending divorce, and that papers had already been filed. He gave her a deadline to secure her own legal representation and arranged to be served, warning of the consequences of non-compliance. Lou disclosed that infidelity was cited as the cause for divorce, supported by detailed evidence collected by a private investigator documenting her affair with Mr. Browner. Their shock was palpable as the reality of the situation sank in. As Lou concluded his remarks, I placed a second manila folder onto the coffee table in front of Angie, causing both of them to react with surprise at the loud sound. I informed them that it contained a copy of our divorce petition, along with the private investigator's report. As Asweep reached for the folder, Angie briefly glanced back at the screen. I then stated our intention to insist on the full enforcement of the prenuptial agreement, emphasizing its regular review every 2 years to align with state legal guidelines. With Angie's signed and notarized signature on every update for the past 28 years, I expressed confidence in its enforceability. Next, I conveyed the decision made by the board of directors of Harrington Brokerage the previous night, which relieved Angie of all corporate responsibilities and severed her association with my firm entirely. I outlined the timeline for returning her company car, canceling company credit cards and cell phone, and terminating memberships to various clubs. Additionally, I mentioned the cancellation of joint credit cards and the freezing of joint financial accounts, all in accordance with the prenuptial agreement. We then detailed our request for an 80-20 split of assets in my favor, including the retention of the house free and clear by myself, along with the request for expedited eviction and a 30-day period for Angie to remove her personal belongings from the property. I mentioned the absence of alimony and child support, and noted that there were additional claims which Angie's attorney could explain. Lou concluded by asking if there was anything he had missed, to which I responded that he had covered all the essential points, expressing appreciation for his thoroughness. As the TV screen went black, Angie immediately stood up and exclaimed that they should wait. She turned to me and requested to bring them back as she had questions. I responded by informing her that it doesn't work that way, and she would need to hire her own lawyer to get answers. Angie then expressed her frustration, threatening to destroy me. With a smirk, I turned to her companion and inquired about his legal opinion on the potential impact of this development in the divorce. His lack of response caused Angie to sink back into the couch, visibly distressed. I couldn't help but smile widely as I waved the TV remote at her before pointing it at the TV again. As the second Zoom meeting commenced, I addressed Jake and confirmed if he could hear me. He responded, stating that he had a conference call to attend and needed to keep it brief. He proceeded to inform Browner of his termination, stating that his personal items were being removed from his office and would be left in the lobby, with a 24-hour window for retrieval before disposal. Jake mentioned that there would be no recommendation provided to Angela. I could sense Angela's fear as her boss's voice slowed down and sighed. Observing her shaking, I realized she was terrified. Despite expressing disappointment in Angela's behavior as a senior member of his staff, Jake acknowledged her 29 years of exemplary service. However, he announced that her position in Hartford had been eliminated and offered her a similar role at their facility in Albany, New York. He gave her a week to decide on the transfer and 30 days to complete the relocation. The screen went blank again, leaving Angie in tears, while her companion slouched back on the couch. I was purposely smirking at Mofo. When he saw me, his rage started to build. He was younger, bigger, And, I'll guess, stronger. Unfortunately for him, he was as stupid as a bag of rocks. As Mofo was ready to explode, I once again waved the remote, pointed it toward the TV, and pressed a button. The screen lit up, and I asked, "Dr. Browner, can you hear me?" Mofo and Angie sat in stunned silence. They were white as ghosts, and their mouths were hanging open. The face of a beautiful blonde filled the screen. Cynthia addressed Michael, informing him that she had filed for divorce and that he should expect to be served in the coming days. She stated her intention to remain in Michigan with their children and mentioned that she had managed to retain her position at the hospital. Michael pleaded with Cynthia, asking her to reconsider and suggesting that they could work things out, insisting that his affair was just a fling. The expression on Cynthia's face, as seen on the screen, indicated her disgust. Cynthia dropped a bombshell, revealing Michael's repeated job losses due to his infidelity. Her additional investigation, following Chris's prompt, painted a damning picture. She listed off the names of Angie's associates, detailing Michael's affairs with each of them. Angie remained silent as Cynthia laughed off any expectation of an answer, declaring Michael unwelcome in her home and requesting his address for his belongings. As the screen faded to black, Michael's threat sent a surge of adrenaline through me. Without hesitation, I retrieved my Colt .45, aiming it squarely at him. The sight of the weapon seemed to physically stagger Michael, but I didn't flinch. I laid down the law, giving him a choice: leave or stay quiet. His silence was the only acceptable response, and thankfully, he chose to comply. Turning back to the screen, I caught sight of Angie's tear-streaked face, her anguish evident. It was a gut-wrenching sight that stirred a mix of empathy and resolve within me. Angie disclosed that she had been seeing a counselor for the past 2 weeks, which prompted her to groan and cry. She expressed frustration, remarking on the irony that despite her actions, she was the one seeking mental health support. I responded with a laugh, acknowledging the absurdity of the situation. Later, I recounted to Angela an insightful question posed by Dr. Waters during our counseling session. She asked whether I understood the saying, "Love is blind," which struck a chord with me. I reflected on how my love for Angie had blinded me to her flaws, even to the point of ignoring her infidelity. Despite everything, I conveyed the depth of my love for her, expressing doubt that she would find anyone else who loved her as intensely as I did. Angie, still visibly upset, explained that she intended to continue seeing Dr. Waters, emphasizing the importance of having someone trustworthy to confide in, especially after such a traumatic experience. She expressed disbelief at the extent of the humiliation and disrespect she endured from someone she loved deeply. However, she remained optimistic, stating her determination to overcome the hurt and move on from the relationship. Angie mentioned discussing her plans for the day with Dr. Waters, who had reservations about seeking revenge, but approved of the first 3 Zoom meetings as a form of payback. However, Dr. Waters advised against the next Zoom meeting, fearing it might set back Angie's personal recovery due to the emotional pain it could cause. I've considered it and will acknowledge that Dr. Wilson is probably correct. The upcoming Zoom meeting is likely to do more damage than good, but I don't care. This meeting will hurt me, but it will cripple you. As I held up the remote for the 4th time and waved it at Angie, she shrunk back into the couch. In a panic, I pointed it at the TV and pushed the button. All eyes were riveted to the screen, and when the face appeared, Angie expressed distress, murmuring in anguish. Chris's daughter, Kelly, then expressed her love for her father, prompting him to reciprocate. Angie cried out, questioning how Chris could treat her so poorly. Kelly interjected, revealing that she had overheard Angie's conversation with her boyfriend and was aware of their actions and plans. She expressed her disappointment and disgust towards her mother, calling her actions grotesque and pitiful. Angie attempted to justify herself, but Kelly remained firm, asserting that Angie's behavior was selfish and self-absorbed. Angela expressed her deep loneliness to Kelly, explaining how much she missed her since she moved away. Kelly, appearing perplexed on the screen, questioned if Angela was blaming her for her own troubles. Angela denied this accusation, insisting it wasn't what she meant. Despite Angela's plea to come to Boston to talk, Kelly rejected the idea, citing Angela's plans to be with her new boyfriend and their private celebration nearer to Cape Cod. Kelly revealed her pregnancy, and her intention to celebrate with those who bring love and happiness, not the negativity that has consumed Angela's life. Angela, asserting her maternal authority, demanded an invitation, but Kelly firmly refused, seeking a celebration devoid of the turmoil Angela represents. For the fourth time, the screen went blank while Angela sat, visibly upset. I stood up and discreetly placed my pistol at the back of my pants. I announced that I was going out for dinner and would return in 2 hours. Addressing Angela, I requested her to pack her belongings and essentials, informing her that she wouldn't be allowed back until the court responded to my divorce petition, a process expected to take about a week. Turning to Mofo, I reminded him of my capabilities and gave him 3 days to leave the state, warning of severe consequences if he remained by Monday. As I pulled open the front door, I glanced back at the defeated individuals and mentioned the supposed beauty of the upcoming weekend in New York. Second story. My name is Jim Reynolds, and I'm now 56 years old, standing at 5 feet minus 8 inches, maintaining decent shape. I've been married to Kelly for 22 years, whom I believe to be my life and soul partner. Kelly, 45, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and standing at 5 feet minus 2 inches, is built for lovemaking. I cherished lovemaking moments with her whenever we were alone, although there were times she didn't reciprocate the favor. I spent 8 years in Special Forces right after high school, mastering explosives, followed by 6 years in engineering school. Subsequently, I established my own company, now a multi-million-dollar construction business. Not many know about my military service due to the demons I battled, leading to 4 years of counseling. My pilot's license predates my military service, but Kelly never trusted me enough to join me for rides. I fell in love with Kelly from the first moment, and we married 2 years later. Coming from old money, with her maiden name as Moore, she descended from Richard Moore of the Mayflower. Kelly's family, however, viewed me as a mere servant. Despite this, I spared no expense on her, buying a large house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, complete with a 4-car garage and a BMW. We have 2 kids, or more accurately, she has 2 kids, John, 21, and the 19-year-old, both in college. I bought them each brand new BMWs, and I own a 10-year-old GMC 4-wheel drive pickup. About 6 years ago, they began mistreating me, later revealing they don't consider me family. They don't heed my words and do as they please, only listening to Kelly, their mother. I hired John 8 years ago, thinking he was my best friend, but the kids seemed to adore him. Approximately a year ago, Kelly inadvertently left her email open, and my curiosity led me to read through them all. To my disbelief, she professed to have despised me since we met, a sentiment echoed by her entire family. Shockingly, I discovered the kids aren't mine. They belong to my ex-best friend, John, a truth they've known for about 6 years. Unbeknownst to me, John knew Kelly before I hired him, and the situation amuses them. My son Rick and John, my ex-best friend, find humor in my obliviousness. Upon marrying Kelly, my father-in-law insisted on a prenup, which I signed. It expires in 2.5 years after 25 years of marriage and includes an infidelity clause stipulating that cheaters leave with nothing. A friend from my military days, Kevin, connected me with Paul, an expert in surveillance. Paul set up a system where Kelly's emails are forwarded to a private account of mine, along with copies of my kids' emails. My entire house is wired to allow me to hear their phone calls, and I have video recordings. Without Kevin's intervention, my family might have faced dire consequences. He dissuaded me from resorting to violence and suggested ways to hurt my family emotionally, such as taking their money, tarnishing their family name, and exposing their disgrace publicly. John and his friends mock me, well aware of the prenup and the affair, eagerly anticipating the arrival of Tom, my best friend, to take over. I possess a video of my father-in-law discussing a plan to create the illusion that I received funding from my company from him. Their scheme involves having John take control of my business, a plan they've been plotting for years. This explains their strategic move to have John apply for a position at my company and act as if he were my closest ally. The only individuals I genuinely trust are my old military buddies, and I'm grateful for maintaining contact with them. I've enlisted Paul as a computer consultant for my company, and he has secured its network, helping me identify allies and foes. This provided me with about 1.5 years to prepare for an impending divorce. During this time, I assumed a role that required me to endure a strained relationship, refraining from expressions of love and engaging in physical closeness only to maintain appearances. Reflecting on how she mistreated me, I intensified these encounters to inflict emotional distress. I made sure to do so only when I was certain she hadn't been involved with John, often sending him out of town for business without her catching on. Although I acknowledged past indiscretions, I pretended ignorance to keep up the appearance that John remained my closest friend. To humiliate her, I engaged in public encounters and discreetly conducted DNA tests that revealed our children weren't biologically mine, but rather John's. Their elaborate plan involved John taking over the company after our divorce, aiming to exploit and embarrass me. Privately, I met with a competitor to sell my company at a reduced price, as I trusted his honesty despite our prior competition. I disclosed my reasons for the sale, ensuring confidentiality among a select few, including our lawyers. The law firm I hired shared my disdain for my father-in-law, a key factor in my decision to engage their services. They provided guidance on establishing a private bank account and phone account. Additionally, they suggested convincing Kelly and the kids to lease cars instead of buying new ones, a proposal well received by everyone involved, ensuring annual upgrades at a lower cost for me. Quietly, I began packing my belongings and placing them in a rented storage shed. People would often laugh either in front of me or behind my back. I suggested to Kelly that we start filing our taxes separately and transfer the house solely into her name for tax purposes. To achieve this, we needed a new mortgage solely in her name, a concept her entire family supported, making it simpler for her to claim the house in the divorce. My new law firm also recommended this to protect my credit. Despite her desire for home improvements, including an in-ground pool, I allowed her to have what she wanted, funded by a second mortgage in her name. Since the house was now solely in her name, the loans also had to be in her name. Half of the funds went towards the changes she wanted, while the other half discreetly found its way into my private account unnoticed. I continued handling all the bills, altering my insurance beneficiaries to direct funds to charities in the event of my demise. I sold my company without attracting attention, ensuring the new owners retained all employees except for John and his associates. Within a year, everything was prepared for my departure. I proposed treating the entire family, including in-laws and my now ex-best friend John, to a 2-week trip to Europe, a move they likely mocked behind my back, yet it served my purpose, especially since Kelly footed the bill. I purchased 150 acres of land in Alaska discreetly, accessible only by plane, utilizing my concealed pilot's license. Plans were made for an off-grid cabin on stilts and a plane shelter, with a hired company to build it, aiming for a move-in ready status. Recognizing the longer timeline for completion, I also bought a house with a large barn-like garage. My residence would be in Fairbanks, a simple house where I could keep a motorhome and have a place to stay when I wanted to travel. A military friend, who shared my dislike for my in-laws, registered a new motorhome in his name. Despite his reluctance, I insisted on compensating him and my other friends for their assistance. From Kelly's emails, they believed I was naive. I ceased payments on the house, their cars, insurances, and utilities, all in Kelly's name. Thus, her credit would suffer, not mine. Establishing a P.O. box in Kelly's name, I had all bills sent there, creating an illusion that I was managing their finances. When the divorce is finalized, her credit will be impacted, and with no alimony payments due to unemployment, they won't uncover the details of my company's sale. All the funds went to an offshore account, creating the appearance that I lost the company to the new owners. Moreover, my plan involves disappearing. Just before the trip, I informed them of a company emergency, stating that I would join them later. Their lack of concern and happiness about my absence didn't go unnoticed. On the night prior to their departure, I made sure Kelly would remember me vividly. Engaging Insinuate, I pushed boundaries for the first and final time, leaving her initially pleased, but ultimately sore and angry. Too bad for John, who had been Insinuate involved with her for years, but had denied me the same experiences. Once they departed for Europe, I returned to the house, leaving it wide open. My friend Paul retrieved surveillance equipment, and I paid a moving van company in cash to transport my belongings to Alaska. I took essentials such as clothes, tools, and fishing gear, along with weapons from my military days, securely stored until my arrival. Leaving all furniture behind, I ensured they wouldn't discover my destination, leaving no paperwork mentioning Alaska. My son Mike, uninterested in hunting or fishing with me, remained unaware of my usual trip destinations. I retained my old phone account to keep Kelly oblivious to my plan, intending to close it out in about a month. Upon departure, I left my old phone with a colleague, instructing him not to answer calls from my wife, but allowing him to make calls for a month. Subsequently, I visited my in-laws' house with my keys, turning on all lights. Utilizing Mike's laptop, I posted on a college website about a week-long college kegger party at their house, anticipating potential chaos. Recognizing their frugality and preference for John, I closed all bank accounts and canceled credit cards from both my wife's and my accounts, totaling $50,000. I sold my truck to a car dealer and after 3 days, departed for Alaska without disclosing my destination. Monitoring events through my wife's emails, no one, including my wife, kids, in-laws, or ex-best friend, made any effort to inquire about my whereabouts. They enjoyed thinking everything was my responsibility, unaware that my wife Kelly was the one funding it all. I took my time enjoying the sights while crossing the country, relying solely on cash for expenses. I drove to Bellingham, Washington, hopped on a ferry to Valdez, Alaska, and then continued to Fairbanks, all without needing a passport. By the time I reached Washington, Kelly and her family had returned from Europe, finding their homes and properties wrecked, completely unaware that I orchestrated it. Surprisingly, they hadn't noticed my absence, being more concerned about their houses than my departure. It was the police, not my so-called family, who started inquiring about me on that Sunday, a day after their return to the United States. Granting my attorney written power of attorney for my divorce, I informed them that I would check in 2 weeks later without revealing my whereabouts. On Monday morning, Kelly received her infidelity divorce papers. Although I wanted to sue John for alienation of affection, Massachusetts law prohibited it due to numerous lawsuits against state politicians. Nevertheless, John and his associates lost their jobs as per my agreement with the new company owners. With all his belongings gone, it was a shame. Kelly found herself owing more than she had in the bank, pursued by creditors, and her cars repossessed. Power and water were cut off. Property taxes and both mortgages were overdue, forcing her and her spoiled kids to move into her parents' hotel since their home was completely trashed. Her parents had to rent cars for the entire family. Feeling empathy for their difficulties, John also had to move in with them, pleading with Kelly's parents for a rental car. They transitioned from BMWs to less impressive vehicles. Kelly and her family hired private investigators to locate me, while Kelly's attorneys attempted to stall the divorce, a futile move. The case gained public attention with DNA test results and explicit videos circulating online. Audio recordings exposed the affair's duration, family involvement, and their plans to ruin and humiliate me publicly, seize my company, and their disdain for the middle class. Videos and audio of her family bribing politicians and public officials and mistreating honest individuals were disseminated on various websites. The divorce eventually concluded. The judge assigned to the case had to recuse himself as he was one of the exposed, paid-off public officials. Though I reached out to the kids, they ignored me. 5 years later, during a visit to Boston to finalize some old business, I went to a restaurant frequented by her family. They walked past me without recognition. Now, sporting long gray hair, a beard, and in better shape, I asked my waiter to send their table a bottle of champagne. The entire family looked 20 years older. They stared at me, and after a few minutes, Kelly yelled, "Oh my God, you son of a Grimalkin!" She recognized me and revealed my identity to them. John attempted to confront me, but with one punch, I knocked him out. When his son approached, I subdued him, but not completely. Kelly ran up, berating me for ruining her family and hurling insults. The police arrived and arrested me. I had the waiter contact my lawyer since I doubted the police would allow me to. They reviewed the surveillance tapes, confirming my calm interaction, and subsequently released me. The footage depicted me sending champagne and calmly conversing with them, highlighting my self-defense stance. Without my lawyer's foresight in preparing for such incidents, and securing copies of the surveillance tapes, I believe the police wouldn't have released me, given their connection to my father-in-law. Kelly phoned my hotel room, requesting a conversation. We met in the hotel lobby, ensuring our discussion was recorded. She questioned why I had taken such actions against her and her family. I looked at her in disbelief, calmly revealing that I discovered their plot against me and acted preemptively. I disclosed my awareness of her ongoing affair with John, questioning why she married me if she harbored hatred. I refrained from mentioning the wired house or spying through her email. They lost their house and cars. Mike lost his house and truck. Forced to live with her parents, Kelly dismissed it as nothing personal, initially escaping her family. She admitted finding pleasure in manipulating me and enjoying the situation involving John. I asked why she didn't divorce me when she met John, and she claimed it was initially enjoyable, ensuring she'd gain everything. I left it at that, returning to my room without further comment. The next day, I departed, heading back to Alaska to relish a peaceful life. I left them to grapple with the ruins I caused in their lives: credit, finances, pride, and reputation, far preferable to resorting to violence. They will have to live with the constant reminder of me,